Good evening and welcome to the 51st meeting of fiscal year 2025 for the Milton Planning Board. At this time, I'd like to now call the meeting to order and begin with our administrative items. First, we have approval of minutes.
Did you want to do the introductions?
And we should do introductions first, yes. Yes, Cheryl, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Cheryl Tagayas, secretary.
Sean Fahey, member.
Meg Oldfield, member.
Jim Davis, member.
And Meredith Hall serving as chair. And tonight with us we have on Zoom Cheyenne, our staff.
Diane Fraser. Sure, you can put their phone.
You're on mute, yeah. There, now we can hear you
Now
now.
we can hear you.
Diane Fraser, Assistant Director of Planning.
They are from the dates of May 8th, May 13th, May 21st, May 22nd, and June 12th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Okay. I did have just two small things that I noticed on just the June 12th.
Okay.
Under MBTA community zoning, under Tom Doherty of 247 Adams Street, the third line down, right to choose, there's an extra letter there, R adjacent.
What page was that, Meredith?
The first page?
First page, okay.
Yeah, it's the second paragraph, the third line. Choose, and there's just a letter R that we can tell Julia.
Okay.
Did you see that?
No,
So, right to choose.
probably might have,
After choose?
yeah, I downloaded what Cheryl sent today. There's no R.
Okay, you don't have it in yours. Okay, so maybe that was corrected.
Oh, I see, yeah, I see where it is. Okay.
And then on page 2, requirement is T, there's a letter T, set by the law. Do you not see that?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you do that one again?
Sorry, on page 2 of June 12th?
Yes.
The first line, density requirement is, I show a letter T, set by the law.
Yeah, oh, I see it, yeah, okay.
Right up here.
I'm correcting it in the online
Okay.
version too.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an extra
Yep.
letter. And then just a few lines down, the fourth sentence, process all zoning is amended, and there's just 2 periods.
Good eyes.
Very good. Impressive.
Out of it. And then, yeah, but everything else I thought looked
Period.
great.
After amended, you said?
After amended, yeah. Just an extra period. Before Mr. Fahey.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay. When you do these track changes, you lose some of those things, I
Right,
think.
right, and those are just tiny little
Yeah,
things,
okay.
but,
Okay.
okay. So with that, and I'll give those to,
I already corrected them in the file that's in the folder.
Okay.
So she should, if she
have the,
accesses those, she'll have the correction.
perfect,
Yeah,
perfect.
when she had them printed out, but it's just the
Okay.
12th, right?
And it's just the 12th that
Okay,
it was amended, everything else is perfect. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes and with the two small amendments to June 12th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 8th, May 13th, May 21st, May 22nd, June 12th, with the 2 small changes made to the June 12th minutes.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you all. And thank you, Cheryl, again for getting those pulled together. So now we are moving to the next meeting dates. We have our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on the 24th of July. Hard to believe that's going so quickly. And then we have August 14th.
so the warrant articles are due before the 14th, right?
Yeah, a draft of the warrant articles, yeah, so, you know, depending on how much we could get done, we could look at moving our meeting that would have been on the 14th to the first week on the 7th in August. I don't know if that's possible.
I think that's out of the way.
Would that make sense? If we need to do any cleanup, again, we'll,
I'm good.
and again, we'll do what we can, in this is such a short window of time before the fall town meeting, so, and I'll talk to the warrant committee. I just think we want to be mindful not to send anything over too late to them.
I think the select board is going to be less forgiving, if you will, and they want to hold to the time frames a bit more, so to not back
agree.
up the warrant
Yeah.
committee. So since they have to go to the select board, and I think the select board meets on,
They'll meet
they'll meet on the 5th or
they'll meet on the 12th,
the 12th.
typically, yeah.
But when was it, that we got an email from Cheyenne, right, with the date that the warrant was going to close? Let me see.
Cheyenne, could you
I read that one.
maybe just review those dates again when the warrant closes?
Yes, let me,
Thank
yeah,
you.
let me find that email.
It's July 1st.
That's when she sent the email, July 1st?
Yeah, it's July 1st email. STM timeline. Of course, it's not opening. Why is it not opening? Oh, I'm not online.
Yeah, so warrant closed August 8th, like for approval articles, August 12th, and then they need to approve the warrant by the 7th of October.
Okay. So then, is that okay if then we would have a little break in between if we move our meeting to the 7th
Yeah.
rather than the 14th? Okay.
I'm good.
All right, so our next meeting, is that good for Cheyenne? Is that good for you? Okay.
Nope, she won't be here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cheyenne. I know we're going to be celebrating you on the 24th. So it will be the 24th and the 7th will be the next meeting dates. All right, great. And so Cheyenne, do you have any updates for us from planning staff?
The only update I have is since our last meeting, we did receive the application and narrative from the Fire Station Building Committee. They will be coming on the 24th as it's a public hearing, a joint meeting with the tree warden, as well as a resident over at 179 Highland. So both applications have been sent out for review for the next meeting.
Okay, great. And then Cheyenne, the only other thing too that you might want to mention is the email that Nick sent out today regarding wanting the planning board's thoughts on the mapping for the liquor license. It's not on our agenda, but I think people can give feedback to you directly if they want to take a look at that. Yeah, do you want to pull the map up?
Or feedback. Yeah, let me do that.
And just quickly, while she does that, back to the fire station. That's a public hearing, so has that neighborhood been made aware? Are they in talks with the neighbors? I wonder.
There is a legal ad sent out to the neighbors.
Yeah.
Like an abutters notice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This is about moving the island?
Yeah, yeah, taking that down for the fire. And I know, yeah, both are going to the Historic Commission that Tuesday before, so they'll have their comments prepared to give to us as well.
Isn't moving the island kind of a must-have because of safety?
Yeah, it's a fire act, yeah, it's gonna be fine, but it's just sort of a procedure that even the town goes through if they're removing a tree
Okay, good enough.
on a scenic roadway, so. All right, so that's the map that was sent out. Did everybody get that?
Yeah.
And Cheyenne, do you want to just explain that real quickly for the public who may want to weigh in as well?
Sure. So at our last town meeting, there was an article for adding more liquor licenses, and at the time it was so it could be expansive of the entire town instead of zone specific, but now we kind of have to make it a little more zone specific. So our town administrator, Nick Milano, went through our map and kind of identified zones that he thinks would benefit from these liquor licenses. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. We just got that email today of his proposition of zones. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we're not, you don't want our comments right now?
Well, we can just, if it's part of her update, we could, if you want to.
So my concern is adding two locations on Route 28 in light of the horrible accident that happened last week with 3 fatalities. You know, I've been, you know, sounding the alarm about how dangerous Route 28 is and adding more density to Route 28. And it's only going to get worse in the future. And it's not just this section of Route 28, which is, it's bad. I mean, I hear sirens every day. But it's also, you have to remember, Route 28 goes all the way around to the other side of the town, which I think on Nick's map also has, you know, another potential site. So I'm just cautious in raising concern about adding more traffic at this point in time on Route 28 until a complete study has been done on this section, on the whole section of Route 28, in fact.
I don't recall that, you know, the fact that this would be liquor licenses for anywhere in town, because it seems to me that they normally would want to be associated with business uses. So that's just my overall general comment. And then my second comment would be Curry College. I don't know what the thought is there, but there are underage students, I imagine. And so historically, I think generally, I'm not saying Curry College in particular, but alcohol in colleges and college students, you know, can be a safety concern too, to your point. So I guess I would like to understand why Curry College was selected. And it seems to me the places that we said that are in the MBTA community zoning that allow business, which may not have it now, those would be good places, because there could be businesses coming in there. So that's my general thought about
Yeah, and the other thought I had was, why are we looking at actual districts in town? Should we, or could we be looking at industries and commercial uses to be able to expand, you know, offering, I don't know if it's just a liquor license isn't just a bar, it also could be a package store, a liquor store. So would current businesses be able to apply for a liquor license? And then that way you're allowing an pre-existing non-conforming sometimes to be able to expand their offerings.
Well, there are businesses on Randolph Ave, right? And that's probably why it was selected. And Wollaston Golf Course has a liquor license, or Wollaston Golf Club. And, you know, whether it's something like a Newcomb Farms would benefit from being able, like the Plate used to have a brunch and serve mimosas or whatever, right? So I guess that's another factor in terms of Randolph Ave, Maggie. But I do take your point. I think I might have a little different idea about like the speed being really a safety issue. And usually when you have more people, it's going to cut down the speed because you're going to have more comings and goings. But I get the overall point about the safety.
Well, I mean, there's a high traffic count on Route 28 now. I went online to look at their report. And I don't know the exact number, I've forgotten, but it's like 300,000 cars a day or something on Route 28. It's an incredible amount. So to your point, the more traffic, the slower the speed. That doesn't seem to be a correlation currently on Route 28.
Then maybe it can take the lane diet that
Yes,
Mass DOT had proposed and get bike lanes and sidewalks, which would improve it
Yeah.
vastly. You know,
So that's where I would
Yeah.
support, if there's an actual change in the design of Route 28, putting in turning lanes, fixing the lights. The lights don't always trigger, even when I'm coming out of Hillside Street. Sometimes it wasn't reading my car, so then I would have to go through the red light at Hillside to go on to Route 28 because it was never turning green for me. So I would think that some things would have to happen.
seems to me that if they took away their prioritization of getting cars through Milton, then you would have more places to cross.
Yeah.
Like if you think about like the neighborhood that's where Sassaman, et cetera, is, they're isolated unless they're in the car. They're still kind of dicey coming out of there in the car, right? But you can't really do a bicycle or pedestrian oriented kind of access there, even if it's nearby, because of the challenges crossing. I mean, I think Reedsdale has the same kinds of issues in
Yeah.
terms of being able to cross. So one of the things I think that was identified in that bike pedestrian master plan is just,
And the kicker is at the top of Sassamon are trailheads that you could actually go and hike or bike, and you can't get to them.
yeah.
I mean, it was dangerous as hell 20 years ago when I lived on Sassamon trying to turn out, and now it's just gotten worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would love for us, not on our agenda, but to send a support to the select board in terms of advocating for those kinds of changes and on Randolph Ave to
Yeah.
improve it. But
We should put that on the agenda.
But I would like to see this somehow opened up to the non-conforming uses in town. I don't know how we would do that because there's so many little pockets. But I mean, and not to signal you out, but if you wanted to sell gift baskets with a bottle of wine, you can't do it. And you're missing an opportunity. So like, how would we absorb those?
I think that's to Maggie's point about the use versus the geography. But I think they've been told they have to tie it to the geography. And I think, I'm getting a sense that what he selected was trying to give that opportunity. So maybe that question could go back is, can it get tied to uses as well as maps? Which I think gets at what you're both saying.
No, good call, I missed it. Yeah.
So Cheyenne, if you could convey that information or thoughts to Nick. I know the select board is going to be meeting on this on the 22nd before we meet, so that would be great. And anyone else who has any comments, please feel free to send it to Cheyenne and she can send it over. Sean, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not really. I was hopeful to have more of an explanation from Nick as to why he chose what he chose, but some of it, I guess, is just pretty logical. But no, I don't really have a lot of comments on it.
Okay. Okay, great. So Cheyenne, was there anything else that you wanted to update on for staff update?
No, just those two.
Okay, great. So at this time, we can now move to a citizen speak. If there's anyone here in the public who would like to join us, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Is this close enough?
Yes.
One additional point, welcome to Cheyenne, although I can't see her, and you might want to double check. A recent review of some of the requirements is when you are having a meeting, everyone has to be seen visibly on Zoom. So double check into that. I'm just passing that along, along with the other reason that I'm here tonight. Right, thank you so much, especially for Cheyenne. Diane DiTullio Agostino, town meeting member since 1983, and a former warrant committee member for years and a former selectman for years. Currently, or possibly we're still waiting for reappointments, although they weren't done legally last year by the town bylaws. And that's really why I'm here at your Citizen Speak. I have grave concerns about way too many legal, technicalities being ignored. But I'm Chair of Conservation and Commission, so Cheyenne, I look forward to meeting you in person someday. You received, each of the members, along with the Select Board, along with the clerk, as soon as it was brought to my attention, received copies of the concern that the Article 5 and 6 were not properly or legally disposed of at town meeting. And I'm just going to give a little bit of background as to, I've never been a lawyer. However, all of these years studying the law for the town of Milton has really led me to this situation tonight. I sat, along with Maggie, who was a co-signer of a citizen's article, and several of you, actually all of you are still the same elected officials, on some of the very topics that I've now pinpointed we have not abided by state and local laws. And the reason that our citizens article to finally put Pope's Pond under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission per the 1963, I believe, article that passed at town meeting was because, as the warrant committee sat here, the vote was 50-50, tied vote. Sounds kind of familiar to the land swap vote, by one vote. And the chair of the Conservation Commission was here. He came to the table, informed the warrant committee any day now the land court was going to approve moving the Pope's Pond under the care, custody, and control of what the land swap requested, which was to split it between the park department for that 5.5 acres or something, and the conservation. Now you're sitting here saying, Diane, why are you explaining this to us? Because here we are, over 24 months later, and the land court is not, and most likely never will, be able to legally do that, because state lawyers informed Maggie and myself, your 1963 motion article that passed must allow it to go to the Conservation Commission for their care, custody, and control. And then when you listen and start digging into these things, it even gets more concerning as to who is overseeing that we're following the law. Because you'll recall, I stood at town meeting and questioned adding $250,000 to go to, in the warrant it says, Peverly Park. Well, Peverly Park, we can't just give $250,000 to a park. I called the Department of Revenue, legal department, they confirmed to me, well, town council would know that appropriations can only be made to the entity that has the care, custody, and control of the land. And yet, we went through town meeting, I think it's over $300,000 now. So what I'm bringing before you, the issues on Article 5 and 6, has individuals who took the oath of office to uphold federal, state, and local laws, is that at town meeting, I'll read this too, the town moderator, and according to the bylaws, the moderator. We only have one moderator at a time in the town of Milton, because the moderator wisely decided to recuse herself. There was the need for town meeting to have a motion made of a nomination and then for a vote to be taken. After that vote was taken is when the individual who received the most votes would be sworn into office to be the temporary moderator. At that point, and only at that point, would they have the authority to oversee and moderate Article 5 and 6. Those are the two articles that come under your jurisdiction and that you're responsible for. So, the moderator, when I emailed to request when the individual was sworn in, because if you'll recall, on the second night, other people had questioned the temporary moderator, and he commented he was sworn in. Lawyers that I spoke to explained after your vote, after town meeting vote, is when you should have, that's when the swearing in could have happened right on stage, as other towns might do. So it sounds like a small technicality, except there were other issues. You'll recall on Article 6, and I might not have given you each of these serious concerns of legality, I also spoke to and provided information to the Attorney General's Municipal Law Unit, because they did, after a review a few years ago of the electronic voting devices and the way those were put into, they agreed the town violated the law. The certification document that goes with the submission of the article does not fully explain that whether or not the law was upheld at town meeting. It's looked at by the town of Milton as, well, we saw this, we heard this. That doesn't mean it was legal. And to think about where this could end up years from now. So Article 6, the citizens article, did not have the map date. On the certification form to the Attorney General Municipal Law Unit, the map date's very important to make sure. At town meeting, I brought this up to the temporary moderator, and yet when he brought it up to town meeting, I do not recall, and I have to review the tape, and it's important that you do, this was a citizens article. Citizens articles, you can't just say, oh, well, we're going to change this. Like, if you wanted Article 5 to be amended, you would say, yes, we accept a friendly motion, and, you don't have to vote it. But with the citizens article, it would have had to have been, there were at least 10 that are in the book, but there are many other signers on that article. So just all of a sudden inserting a map date is very questionable, as well as the fact that there was a large amendment to the, what was in the warrant with the streets actually identified. So if the map was not in the warrant, the exact date, to let the citizens who might be concerned know, and I know former Selectman Roxanne Musto spoke to this, that, people are asking her, wait a minute, my street all of a sudden is mentioned. And I really, I don't want to take too much of your time, but we could end up putting the town in such a legal bind if Article 5 and Article 6 are not properly, the word is, disposed of. And thankfully, or not thankfully, the actual moderator, the moderator did go back to the podium and state, don't leave yet, I need to take control back. So town meeting was legally dissolved. So you can't just say, oh, it wasn't legally dissolved, we have to reopen, it was not even properly adjourned, it was fully dissolved. So the question with someone overseeing the debate, overseeing the votes, not having been sworn in after an election. That's almost like me saying I'm going to run for the planning board next year, but I'm going to go upstairs and get sworn in now. It's just not something that you can do. And there's been no response. A lot of lawyers that I have talked to, well, what are they coming back to you with, has an answer. I don't see how they can. I also, over a month ago, asked for town council's errors and omission proof. When I was the seated selectman, I requested that because we had a lot of contracts. There were questions on the contracts. I wasn't even given it as a seated selectman. So that should be a matter of public information, because we've also heard about Tom Dougherty, he might not have had errors and omission, which that was all just hearsay, when I am telling you, I've requested it under public records, I have not received it to even find out. Okay, all these questions at town meeting, when we have town council being paid to sit there to make sure that you all make legal choices and that we as town meeting members pass things legally. Just the same way with the Lamb Woods, or the land swap article, and the Pope's Pond article, and the other big thing that I learned, and it's right in the state law, the deed for Lamb Woods was 100% in perpetuity, because it was conservation land. It says it right under Mass General Law 184, Section 31, whether or not stated in any deed. That raises serious questions as to what town council presented to us, and that only won by one vote. So I am really imploring you, you can call and ask me any of the details.
Thank you very much.
But it's very important that your Article 5 and Article 6 every step of the way, because I probably didn't mention all the questionable steps.
All right. Thank
So
you very
for
much.
your
Thank you
Maintaining your oath of
for bringing
office
this attention.
and giving
Yes.
us time.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, anyone on Zoom, Cheyenne, are you seeing any hands up who would like to speak?
I am not seeing
Citizen speak? Okay, great. Thank you. Then we can move on to our next item on the agenda, and that will be to discuss the articles for fall town meeting. I know we had organized a list of things that we were going to think about and sort of prioritize. I had sent out, asked Cheyenne to send out a draft of sort of a template that I thought we could work through in thinking about the sign review. I thought that would be one. I don't know if people have had a chance to look at. Cheyenne had also sent a few of the Airbnbs. I know that was a concern, or anything else that folks want to discuss. But I thought if we could at least try to get one thing accomplished, for a fall town meeting, it would be nice to check off another box. So is that okay if we walk sort of through this and discuss?
One, I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing that was on, it might be on the list, but
Yeah.
from 2019, and I'm trying to think of things that are kind of low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
2019, there was actually, I'm not sure when it was first adopted, but the traffic impact mitigation, what triggers a contribution to the fund. There was a miss in there where the business districts were left out of having to be subject to it.
Okay.
And the board at the time brought an amendment, and it got sent back for further study. And it's not been studied since. But it's a missed opportunity. I think we asked for it for maybe 440 Granite Ave when it wasn't being triggered. So I just thought that was one.
Yeah.
It's like, if this project is going to contribute to traffic and parking issues, then they would have to make a contribution into a fund that is for that particular neighborhood. Well, the fund is one for the town, but it's
For the business district?
distribution out would have to go towards the neighborhood impacted by the project, which made the contribution. So I can get that out, but I just want, for our next meeting, but I just wanted to raise that since we didn't talk about it before.
I think that would be great.
And it's the work's been done in the past, I think. I don't recall what the concerns were at the time. I'd have to go back and look. But if you're interested, I will do that for the
That
next
seems
meeting.
like a simple,
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if most of the work has been done on it,
Right.
then I would think that'd be easy enough.
It's one of those that was sent back for further study, so we just have to look
Okay.
at what the concerns were.
all right.
And that was an amendment to the traffic and bylaw? I'm sorry.
It was the
Parking and traffic bylaw?
It was the traffic impact mitigation. I can look up which section of the code it is at some point, but it was
That's good. to know.
Article
Yeah.
4 in 2019,
Okay.
it looks like, on my list, which is the list that Josh Eckert-Lee had put together. Was that on your list too, Julia? I didn't have a print of everything that's on your list, so okay. And then as far as signage, is the
Do you want
signage,
Cheyenne to pull up the list that we had talked about? Because Sean wasn't here, so that might be just helpful for Sean.
I
Yeah,
wasn't either.
yeah.
And Jim, I'm sorry, yeah, we had a small group, and we were out by 8:15, so
Missed a good meeting.
that was a good
I'll
one.
try to say less, so we're up by 8:10.
Cheyenne, if you wouldn't mind pulling up those lists
Me too.
that Julie had built.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a general list.
Yeah.
I don't have a list from Julie. I just rewatched the Zoom and I made a new list on what we talked about, just because we wanted to know what we were proposing. So I can pull it back.
Or it can be Julia's, yeah, either one, that's,
so while she's doing that, this that Josh had put together in May of '23, identified things that had been discussed but hadn't made it to any formal language for submission. But something that I dug back out from my list here, and from 2018, Maggie, it's aligning nursery and farm language with state language, and Marion McKettrick had supplied some language for that.
Yep.
I don't know if that's something for the fall because of limited time, but I would like for us not just to
Yeah.
decide about the fall now, but to decide about the spring, because it'll be here before we know
Right,
it.
and we'll have a lot more time to.
And the things that
This would
might,
be easy to,
the things that might take a little more time.
Yeah.
Or public input, but we want to, I just think we should prioritize which things that we think we can do now and what we can do in the spring.
can you increase the size of that? To see sort of what, yeah.
I can try to sort of put this on a new Word doc.
Yeah, that would be,
It's just on my,
right, exactly, yeah, just for general. Yeah, so what else while she's doing that?
The small cell wireless, I think, was something that,
5G,
yeah, the 5G.
and that's something I think that is already pulled together in the,
And the cut and fill, which we've talked about. And I had done some work with Tim and Denny Swenson on that before, and it got paired back to what that tree bylaw was. But it does, it was something that Joe Prondak was involved with, and I have notes from those discussions with him. I think it's important, like, we're going to lack a little bit of institutional knowledge in the building department, but I think it's important to get their feedback because they're the ones who have to, look at applications and decide what conforms and doesn't conform, and then also the ZBA, because they're also the ones that
Like get the complaints.
well, they look at the complaints, but they also have to make the variances and the
Yeah.
special permits and so forth. So I think it'd be important to ask them if there's things that they think are low-hanging fruit
That's a great point.
that we should address.
Well, one thing on the cut and fill, and I appeared before the planning board, when I believe it was Cheryl and Rich and Kathleen and Denny. And the cut and fill bylaw covers a lot of seemingly dissimilar topics. You would think that, in my mind, cut and fill was literally you're going in and cutting land away and then bringing land in for projects. But one of the last paragraphs on the cut and fill references nurseries having the ability to bring in clean earthen materials and for everyday use. And I requested, I think it was like back in 2020 maybe, that really was a very, I think Meredith, you were on it too, at that point. I provided language, it really should be taken out of the cut and fill because it has nothing to do with cutting and filling. And so if we're looking at the cut and fill, then I think we have to look at the whole thing and we might have to parse it out and put it into the correct, under the correct heading in our zoning. So again, our shade tree should not be in cut and fill. That should be a different article. So I think that cut and fill is just kind of very unwieldy, needs to be addressed.
And I don't think that's something that can be done for fall. I don't think it's something that can be done in one meeting, but
There is a new building commissioner who will be coming on
Right.
board, so it would be nice to include.
And I had taken a look at what some other communities have for this topic, and there's a model land clearing, grading, and protection of specimen trees bylaw that's the Cape Cod Commission has. It's a model bylaw, so like Cape towns can adopt from that model bylaw, the way I understand it. So, you
That
know,
would be interesting to,
yeah, and then there was, there are a couple other communities that had some. So the trigger, one of the things that was that I was really surprised about was there was no permit required unless it was something like 7,500 cubic yards, which is a lot. And so like, you know the property out on the very end of Canton Avenue, right before it makes that right turn to connect with Blue Hill Ave. There's a couple of fences and shrubs, et cetera. That's all fill. And I remember calling Joe Prondak about it and asking him for the plans, the site plans that showed all the fill. And he only had plans for like the structure there. And I said, well, did you make a determination that this didn't require a permit for the fill? And he had made that determination. But if the bylaw isn't that explicit, then it's an interpretation of the building commissioner. So on a scenic road, to me, you're putting in that kind of fill with fencing, you're changing the character of the scenic road, right? And so whether cut and fill addresses scenic road differently or proximity to a property line, that's kind of like a retaining wall to me when the way they did that. And so it's the
It is a
same.
retaining wall.
Yeah, it's multiple.
4x2 concrete blocks
Yeah.
you'd see on the side of a highway.
Yeah, I mean, it might,
Can't believe they did that on a scenic road.
and with no permit triggered. So,
I thought the cut and fill was 1,000 cubic yards, that it triggered if you were bringing in over 1,000 cubic yards, you need a special permit. And that happens a lot especially on scenic roads and in historic neighborhoods, because we're all on septic. So it happens a lot in my neighborhood. And so when a property sold behind the nursery and they were bringing in, they had to go through the ZBA to bring in over 1,000 cubic yards to do a raised septic system. And it just has to get done, but my concern was at the time that this raised septic system was literally feet from my property line, and we had just spent a lot of money on a new drainage system, and my concern was if the ZBA approved this raised septic system, how would it impact any properties downstream? And that's a concern, and they granted it, and a beautiful house was built. But they have a raised system that affects abutting properties.
I have to go back, I'm not finding it
so,
right now, but in one of my notes, just quickly on this, and you may want to move on to other things, but a couple of the things is that Joe Prondak had said at the time that that bylaw, our cut and fill, is rarely used, once or twice a year, he had said, and it doesn't take into account the size of a lot. So if you had a 2-acre, 3-acre, 4-acre versus a 1/4 acre, the trigger is still the cubic yards. So obviously that's a lot different for a small lot than it is for a large lot. And there was nothing that was requiring anything about a balance of cut and fill or net figures or anything. So, you know, I think, again, I can dig through my notes again and kind of put a summary together from where we got with it before.
and we had also talked about doing a subcommittee on this, because I think this will take some coordination. This will be something that's super important, but something that will need input from ZBA, from what we've seen here on the planning board and what a building commissioner would have to add.
And then probably the DPW because of stormwater
Yeah,
regs.
right.
Which brings me also to the stormwater regs, because a lot of, you remember Wolcott Woods, a lot of that earth was disturbed up front in order to put in the stormwater retention structures. So you're having to do a lot of cut to put in the structures underneath, which impacts trees too, which we've seen in other projects. So
Would Maggie like to be a subcommittee? You have expertise also, production standpoint.
Paragraphs in it,
Yeah.
so
So Sean, maybe, yeah,
would have limited
Cheryl,
input.
We're shooting for the spring for this? Or are we shooting
this
for
would
the
be
fall?
for spring.
Okay, yeah.
And I
For spring.
would think that the articles will probably be due in, what, February for spring?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's time for that, yeah.
The thing is, it's hard to measure. I believe it's 1,000 cubic yards on a trailer, 1,000 cubic yards to ensure that it's not in excess of,
So enforcement.
yeah.
Yeah, that part is a challenge.
Yeah.
Because you will still end up with a balanced site. You know, you may have organic material on the site that isn't, can't be utilized for, it gets a bit complicated. Yeah, I don't even know how we enforce it, but for some reason I feel like it's 800 yards, not 1,000, but I can't remember. But I'd be happy.
And I think, the whole reason to address it is because of the site planning and the projects that we review.
Such as the memory care, and we've got the,
Subdivision
Yeah.
on Pleasant, some of the daycare facilities with the large stormwater retention, necessitating
Right.
site planning around these things, so I do think having on the trees as well, because,
It's important,
people,
yeah.
I don't know how, you probably have heard too, but the 40B on Brush Hill Road, where they just came in and cut all the way into that hill, and, a lot of people don't like, at least so far, the way that's looking. So,
that was,
okay.
yeah, I think that would be great. So that is one that we've earmarked that we definitely would like to. I know the bed and, Airbnb short, and see if there's something that we could have a template for, that we could do. I don't know if we could get it done by fall, but it's important with, I think with the ADUs that when those start to go into a
Was there something that's been worked on before?
we have not.
Okay. So, with,
It was from other towns, what Cheyenne sent
I
out.
see, okay.
So we might need to,
I first do an article a few years ago for Airbnbs.
That's why I was asking, but I don't recall. I'd have to go back and look through our records.
Yeah, as I was
See,
going through the
yeah.
plans today, I did see.
You saw one? Okay.
because there is something that the building department refers to, but I didn't think it was a separate Airbnb.
I'll have to read it, I just saw the title.
Yeah, well, we can ask Walter White, maybe check out, because there was a complaint in East Milton Square that one was being used for an
Well,
Airbnb.
Jay came to the office just tonight, and I told him that you guys were considering this, and he
Yeah.
said that they're absolutely not allowed. So,
So maybe there is something that did go through town
Yeah.
meeting. Okay, so we should find out about that. Good, and I'll talk to Jay. Jay's would know. Okay, and then the other things on the list, those are housing production plan, we talked
How
about.
long would it take to do a housing production plan?
I understand that the select board is taking the lead on that, and because I think I watched a part of a meeting where they, Cheyenne? Do you know?
I did not hear that they were taking the lead. Last time we left off, we were still getting the
Our consultant.
quotes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood
And
then.
were you able to reach out to the person who did ours the last time?
Yes, we did. Last time, the last update was from our last meeting, and she said that she was interested, so Nick was contacting her.
Okay. So that is in the work, that's moving along.
Oh, so these were where we were talking about use of funds,
Yeah, this
right?
was a funds use. Yeah, this was a little different, but, yeah, these aren't the zoning articles that we signed review bylaw, we did have that. I think these were general things that we were talking about.
The recodification would be a zoning
Yeah.
change, but again, that's not something I think that could get done for September.
We
But I
talked
would
about that
love
for the
to see
spring.
that get done for the spring.
Yeah.
What's 7 say? What's number 7? Rules and...
Rules and regs. So we were talking about reviewing those.
Okay.
I think that's a spring.
Well, that doesn't have to go to town meeting, so
That's just,
that's our own work. Some of that, though, is, I think, with coordination with DPW, because we have this, in the rules and regs, we have this road section. Find it here. And we've granted waivers many times, because this is a 50-foot right-of-way, and requires sidewalks on both sides, and
yeah.
there's just, it hasn't been really updated or looked at in a long time, and, you know, it requires granite curb, and we've often done Cape Cod berm and other waivers, and so, like, this is a marked up from August of 2019. It has long been on people's radar, but this is not just a planning board thing. I mean, this is a DPW
Yeah.
engineering item, and just like the stormwater regs.
So
that's
should we
kinda like a
prioritize
committee
what
too.
we think we can get done for fall? Like,
That's what
are
I'm
the
trying to
main-
do.
So I think Airbnb is huge.
We have something, we may already have
Sign
something.
review is the sign bylaws.
Those two are the biggest.
Are big.
Yeah.
The 5G thing, which as I said before, I didn't really know what that was, but you say that's practically done anyway.
And can I just, Cheryl, do you want to mention there's a public hearing on July 30th, and do you,
Yeah, it's on the,
this is why I'm worried about signage. It's like, and this would be a special permit, it's going to the ZBA on this, but I think residents need to know, because and this is something that's being proposed, and part of,
yeah, I don't know what we can do about things like this, where it's operating under a variance that was granted
Yeah,
in
it's a little bit
1962.
different, yeah.
But where in that mess, I'll call it a mess, but, you know, between the roadways and the highway, that commercial building that's actually in the residential district, we talked about that with the East Milton overlay.
Where's Quantum hits Adams?
Yeah, that building.
The US Trust, Rockland
By 16 and a half feet, illuminated channel letter sign to be installed facing the highway for, and the applicant is the Russian School of Mathematics. And I called Kathleen to ask. She's not on the panel, but she did look it up, and so there is a filing that if we wanted to look up and look at it, but there's no mock-up.
I do remember them.
Sorry?
Committee, I believe, like a month ago.
Okay.
It was like a whole thing to get them kind of where they are now, but I do remember them.
Okay.
So we have a meeting on July 24th. Could we put on our agenda a discussion about that, and then we could send the ZBA our thoughts and let them know that we are in the process of reviewing our sign, and it might be too premature for them to be granting anything at this point in time.
Well, certainly illuminated signs are becoming an issue, so not internally illuminated,
Yeah.
I should say, not externally, but.
And so, one of the things about the signs, I agree with you, but I do think we still can do a traffic impact mitigation for the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
But the signs, when I called Tim today, because I wanted to ask him what he recalled together 10 years ago. And he said that the business district signage was updated, or amended rather, in 2017, but it didn't fully encompass some things. Like it did not ban billboards and neon. And it did not address in the residential districts, which this one that we just spoke about is one of those. But you can think about their nursery or Eagle Farm or Thomas or Newcomb, or I mean, a lot of businesses actually on Randolph Ave, but 7-Elevens, they were all
Residential.
they end up having to go with there's no zoning that addresses them.
Yeah.
So I think that we would want to tie, at a minimum, tie it to the business, same thing to the business.
Right, and it does
business
break that
districts are
down
subject
in
to.
here.
And then the other thing Tim said is that the handbook needs to have a better connection to the zoning. Because when someone's making a decision, signs, you have to have something that's defendable. According, Tim said, like town council said, I can't defend, there's not enough here to defend.
Right.
So, like, can you deny a sign based on what's in the current kind of
And you
zoning?
can't,
So-
and that's
Right.
the problem, is it
and
has
then
to be,
And then this was so when Julia called me when she couldn't reach
Okay.
you, I said, this would be a good thing for everyone to have, because this is what's in the zoning, the handbook, and
Right.
then Tim's.
yeah,
So I know you
Right.
had asked her for this, but
yeah.
I had
Thank you, but
suggested adding those.
Yeah, so
Sort of-
from a process, we've identified how many, 5 or 6 that we want by fall?
No, I think 2 by fall. We
Two
talked-
two by fall.
Yeah.
And then, so should we assign it to, that's what I was trying to think, should we assign, to your point,
Committees on these?
have,
Yeah.
So that's my
other
point too about thinking
subcommittees?
about spring, is it's going to take a lot longer, so we shouldn't wait 2 months to decide who's going to
Yeah.
work on them, because it'll creep up fast. And if it takes
agree.
coordination with other boards and committees and staff, it takes time to get those meetings scheduled. I think we should try and say, these are our goals for the spring too, and who's going to work on them.
Right.
Because otherwise, I think it'll be hard to meet our deadline.
So what are we saying for the fall? What to? Sign by law?
I think that if the sign can address both business and residential, or if it needs to be 2 separate, I think traffic impact mitigation, because it's just expanding it to make sure it covers all the districts. I think it was an oversight in terms of the language before.
So I think what Tim drafted does address both residential and business, so when we get to that, but I think those 2 would be good. And then the cut and fill for spring, the recodification, if we can do
I
that
agree
for
with that,
spring.
yeah. I think the nursery farm,
Nursery farm for spring.
since it's been on the 2018.
and that's mostly, I mean, that's fairly easy, the nursery farm, because it's just getting
State law.
state law. It's not necessarily changing anything, it's just becoming current.
Where's the Airbnb?
I think that's,
And we'll double check to see what we already have. I'll talk to Jay and find out what he's referring to as saying you can't do an Airbnb.
because if he's saying it's not allowed, and that's the official stance,
Then maybe we don't
a
to have anything.
priority.
Yeah.
So fall is sign review and cut and fill, and recodification.
The spring is cut and fill and recodification.
About scenic road updates.
I think we did.
I don't remember exactly what we were thinking, though. I think if we had a situation or two where applicants didn't know that they had to file for approvals, and they removed trees and stone wall sections in the public way, on public right-of-way, right?
Yeah,
So I don't know if folks want to try and remember what the other thoughts about that were.
yeah, do outreach on that.
And is the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, are they working on a tree bylaw? I feel like they've been working on one.
I think they may have.
So I could check.
So, yeah. Would you follow up with them on that?
Yeah.
That would be great. And we can find out from the tree warden when he's here on the 24th. I think that's a good,
We had talked about non-conforming businesses. I don't know if that we can tackle for the spring or not, but
yeah, that was mentioned.
I think there's some interest in business tax revenue, so that could be tied together.
I think we certainly keep it on.
So for signs, Meredith, you're interested in signs, right?
Yes. And I'd love to go through this tonight, to just, if we could, just quickly, because we only have this meeting on the 24th, really, and then I don't want it to feel rushed for people, but I think what was put together is, there's some little things we could change, but
Do we know that what parts of this may have already been in?
this would be just replacing it all, so it would be
Okay.
inclusive of, and
Of
I'll,
those,
and I'll
okay.
cross-reference, I'll take that on to look at that, to see what was included in this, and so I can mark it as what was updated, so I
So when a
appreciate that.
business goes to apply for a sign, this is the packet they get. Is this correct? This what they get in the
I think so, that's-
checklist
Yeah.
that they follow?
Yeah. So this breaks out also, it's almost like our site plan review, but for signs, it gives a more complete, this is what you need to bring, these are all the tools. So Cheyenne, if you want to pull up on the screen,
So Meredith, just
2015.
quickly,
yeah,
if you look at page 5, the bottom, it says that this is replacing basically the
yes.
business. This doesn't mention, it's mentioning only business district, right? So
It does reference,
signs and, I just.
yeah, the
wanna be
following
clear.
addition to, with the following addition, because it does reference residential.
I was on this. but
So-
it's not numbered.
Oh, I don't have that.
We want to make sure that when we go through it,
So I was looking at this one that has,
Okay, yeah,
this is the front,
yeah,
yeah,
this one.
that's the one.
which is the one that
The August
we wanna
3rd,
make
was last
2015.
updated August 3rd, 2015.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
It addresses,
Page
yeah.
5.
And one other thing Tim said when he when he did this was he had looked at sign bylaws in Lexington and Wellesley and other
Yeah.
communities. So I guess what we would need to do, Meredith, is to find all of the references to signage, I guess.
Yeah, 'cause this,
Because it's in the, like definitions would be a different part where you're, it says, so here he's saying you're amending the definition section, which is part of the overall bylaw in the front. And then this goes down further into billboards and business district, right?
Right.
So where's signs and billboards now? You found
Yeah.
that, Julia,
here,
right?
this chapter 113,
Okay,
1.
yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Do you have an extra one of these?
yeah, so we would want to make sure it's
That's all right.
all included.
I'll take a photo of it. I'll give it back to you one sec.
Yeah, no problem. We'll probably keep that. And accessory uses. Residence, yeah, okay. But they're very specific, I think they're good as they relate to the changes that would be, or updates that would be made. So starting with like the 5, intent and purpose. I thought that intent and purpose looked good, pertinent to other laws, the purpose, interpretation and conflict clause, severability clause. So I didn't want to, we can go through that on our own and maybe have comments on that, but getting into the applicability and then the existing signs. So really starting on page 7, I thought we could cruise through this, try to cruise through this quickly. And the way Tim had written this to break down, there's 3 types of existing signs. Those existing signs are those defined as erected before would be our fall town meeting, and are classified into 4 separate categories. These are conforming signs which comply with all provisions of this bylaw in its most recent amendment form. 2, prohibited signs as specified in section, that needs to be filled in. Non-conforming signs which do not comply with one or more provisions of this bylaw in its form prior to the October, and for us 2025 town meeting, but which are not described as prohibited signs in subsection 8. And then non-conforming protected signs which fully complied with this bylaw prior to the amendments approved by the October 2015 meeting. Removal of existing signs. So I was mistaken when I said this is not retroactive, because I wanted to make sure that it's any sign that currently exists is grandfathered and does not need to be, we wouldn't be asking anybody to take any signs down. But these are when the removal of existing signs, when non-conforming signs which are enlarged, reworded, redesigned, replaced, or altered in any way, including repainting in a different color or relettering, shall comply immediately with all provisions of this bylaw, and provided further that any such sign has deteriorated to such an extent that the cost of restoration would exceed 35% of the replacement value in time. So that seemed all fine. The building commissioner, this talks about the building commissioner as the authority, shall order the removal of any signs erected or maintained in violation of this bylaw. 14 days notice in writing shall be given to the owner of such sign or the building structure or premises in which the sign is located to remove the sign or to bring it in compliance with the bylaw. Abandonment or failure to maintain a sign, that seems pretty straightforward. Then sign permits, the sign permit required. All persons desiring to erect, install, place, construct, alter, move, or maintain a sign shall apply to the building commissioner for a permit. Exempt signs are excluded from this requirement. So this is what I thought was really good, is the application submittal and content. So it makes it really clear if somebody is wanting to put up a sign, what you need, and if you Sign Review Committee. John Zikowitz does a wonderful job of just walking through everything that's needed when it's applied, if there's things that are missing, like such as the material or the color of the signs, the type of illumination is required to be noted, number type, size, height of sign, the size of lettering. That's all things that are asked for. And those seem very straightforward and sort of pretty much what we do right now. For all signs, a copy of a letter from the chairman of the sign review committee indicating the recommendation of the sign.
Can we back up? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Non-conforming signs and non-conforming protected signs on page 7. Going back to the definitions, and I don't see those being, I suppose, non-conforming straightforward enough, but protected, is not defined, so what's...
Yeah, that they would be
What's
protected.
protected? Is it free speech protection type signs? But
Yeah.
it's not defined.
Is to protect, yes.
So I think we would need to know what that is.
Okay, good. Comply with this bylaw. All right,
And all these dates would just need to be the new date.
right.
And then I guess,
Isn't that the definition right there? Non-conforming protected signs, like number 4? I take that as signs which fully complied with the bylaws prior to the amendments approved by October 15, right? So there's no need to change those signs, we're just sort of adopting them?
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be the definition? I mean, I'm not looking for more
Where are you
clarity
looking,
than
what
that.
page are you looking on, sorry?
Page 7, existing signs,
Oh.
number 4. I mean, it seems like 1 through 4 are all
Fully complied with this bylaw.
definitions, right? Like a conforming sign is, it doesn't say a sign which, but it should say conforming signs are signs which comply with all provisions of this bylaw in its most recently amended form. I guess to me that makes sense.
okay.
All 4 of those kind of make sense if you just put the word after number 2, prohibited signs are signs as specified in section.
So-
It just seems like it's missing one little phrase. Right, and then number 3.
You're thinking more,
Well, I'm looking at conforming sign, and it says it complies with all the provisions of the bylaw. And then I look at non-conforming, and it says it fully complies with the bylaw. But there's no amendments that have been, I guess I'm not quite understanding,
Prior to the amendments approved.
because we don't have any amendments yet, right? So I guess,
I think that's the idea. If there's a sign that kind of meets the criteria before October 15th, it's non-conforming protected, so there's no need to change it. That's the way I take that.
but is it protected is protected mean that if they want to change it in the future, they get to keep it what they had before? Like, if I look down to the existing sign, it says removal of existing signs, but it also says enlarged, reworded, redesigned,
Well, it says
or altered. So
non-conforming.
that's not really replacing.
so when they, if you,
Non-conforming signs which are enlarged, rewarded, or altered.
So is it protected? If it's not,
if it's before,
if you're replacing, if you're rewording it, and it's not, or if you're going to redesign
no,
it?
if you that's more than 35%, that's what they're,
Okay.
too, if it is just,
But isn't that the reference to that section 8? When you turn to it, there's a category of signs that are called exempt signs. Are exempt signs and protected signs referring to the same type of sign?
Which page are you looking at, Sean?
Page 14.
yeah, when you get, exempt signs are a type of sign,
And prohibited.
But it also
And the
but
pro-
it reads, "The following sign shall be allowed by right without the necessity of a sign permit." Is that a non-conforming protected sign?
And exempted signs are different than prohibited signs. If you turn
Yeah.
the page.
yeah, it could,
Right. So there's a category that defines prohibited signs.
I take the exempted signs to be like a handicap bathroom sign or exit sign.
Or street, it gets into the
A
detail.
long
Yeah.
description of what an exempt sign is.
Oh, you're right. It goes all the way to page 15. Wow.
Holiday decorations.
And some of this came about there was, the reason some of this
Public
didn't get
interest signs.
changed back then is there was a case before the Supreme Court about what's protected under free speech. That's kind of what I was thinking when I said what does protected mean, and
Right.
maybe this is where it defines it, but
So what is the history of this? This is noted as proposed zoning back in October 2015, 10 years ago. Did it not get?
It never, Tim left. That's when he left.
But there was a
2015, that's 10 years ago. Tim wasn't,
No, he was assistant planner, then
He
he
was
left.
assistant town planner.
But what happened was this case, and so there was, when Alex Whiteside was still on the board, that there was this sense that there was only so much you could do with changing the signage requirements until that case was decided. And that's why there was a limited amendment that went forward in 2017. And then I think once that case was decided, it never got revisited or never got moved forward with the change in personnel. But that's why it didn't happen at this 2015.
Oh, that makes, yeah.
But I think that there is a class of signs that are considered protected, but not this type that we're trying to regulate here. And I think that's where a town council or someone should take a look at this and make
Yeah.
sure that it's consistent with that law.
And so protected, the way that I look at it is a protected sign is the free speech sign. And can those,
I know that business signs advertising a commercial use are not considered protected, right? But as far as the size, I don't remember now, Maggie, but it was surprising that really you could
No,
put something up like in your
yeah.
yard that was, pretty visible. Like decrying some whatever issue that the person was concerned about, and that's considered protected. But it's not
but
advertising a
it's,
business.
yeah, right. So, I'm not saying I believe in free speech. And so my questions are just, is it the size of the sign related to like the size of the building or the
Yeah, and
size
it's
of
in
the
there.
lot?
That's what's in here.
Yeah, size of
so
the lot.
So it describes it.
So I think-
Even
yeah.
if it's a protected use, protected sign.
There's a
it's
limit to
still-
the size.
There's a limit to the size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I interpreted protected as to be, it's protected, meaning that you can maintain that sign because it was approved. Well, no, yeah, protected. It's protected if it was before October 20. But if you go and change it, that non-conforming, it's sort of like if you take a house that is a non-conforming resident, single-family home, and you tear that down, or a garage, you're now you have to follow the current zoning that may not have been in place when that house was built.
So
So-
I always go back to mine. I've taken down a sign because it was in disrepair. I've also had a sign hit on Route 28, and I haven't replaced that yet. So now, and those were grandfathered in.
Were
So now
those
do I
special
have
permit?
to-
Were those special permit, those signs?
No, because
So they'll
the
go through the
selectmen at the time could give, they sign
Yeah.
permits, and so we got a sign out on Route 28 through that simple process,
Yeah. Yeah,
forever ago,
right,
50 years ago.
right.
And it gets
So that
hit
would just
by the
be-
plow, so it's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
replacing.
So that you would probably, go before the sign review committee who would,
Yeah, I don't know if I
I think you would if it's, if
maybe
you
you wouldn't have
voluntarily
to,
take
yeah.
it down,
yeah,
don't put it back up, and then you want to put it back up in a certain amount of time, I think you have to go before the sign review committee. But if
and that
it's hit
seems
by
like that would be
repair it,
protected, but I'm,
I don't know.
Yeah. If you take it down and put it back up, it might, I know, like St. Michael's Church just they're gonna put up a new sign, and changing color, and they just went through the sign review committee, everything,
That's surprising, really, because I would think that they're a Dover,
Dover.
they're protected under
that's what
Dover.
I know, but they did go before the sign review committee. So those are all, yeah, we'll have to define, I guess, what
What protected is and what exempt is.
Yeah, it's not clear to me yet, but I need to continue looking at it, but that's the question I
and
have.
that's why this is to sort of filter out some of those things that we want to identify with the removing of his existing signs. And then, okay, so the application and submittal and content, I think that's really helpful to applicants, again, like our site plan approval. The following attachments, necessary copies should be.
So one of the things,
Yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to see.
Is this bringing back memories of looking at this years ago? This is,
I don't know if my brain works
Yeah.
that well anymore for 10 years,
Yeah.
but yes. Did this require some kind of visualization on the building, of the sign on the building? Because it says color photographs of the property. But now it's pretty common with technology that's available to do a simulation of the signage on the building.
and they've been doing, I've noticed that
I think
that's
that should be a requirement if it's not.
good, because I've been noticing the applicants are doing that, so it might
Apparently
be,
they haven't for that big one on,
yeah, that is, yeah, I don't, signs, dimensional drawing, lettering, words. So how would you word that?
I'll come up with something.
Color photographs of the property under,
Yeah, somewhere under there, I would say some kind of a visualization or mock-up.
that would be under 4, maybe, added to that.
Yeah, I would add a separate line there,
Visualization, color.
which would, show the sign in three-dimensionally on a photograph or a rendering to scale or something like that, so it's not just
Yeah.
a hand scribble.
On the building, okay, we'll work on that. Okay. Let's see.
So
So
can we just go
fees,
through
yeah.
that list again? So the
Yeah, and the-
purpose, the dimensions.
And so
Did they give, there was not we haven't gotten to a size limit yet, right? That's
Yeah,
coming?
that's coming.
Okay.
But I did think, under 6, appropriate fees as set from time to time by the Board of Selectmen, I feel like that should be the building commissioner, because they typically set the fees, because they're applying. The following attachments and necessary copies as required by the building commissioner shall be submitted.
That's a question for the select board, maybe
Yeah,
Nick,
that-
maybe Nick, I don't know.
Because I don't think when they apply, I don't know who gets those fees currently, so I can ask John too, the building department. And then the town shall process sign permit applications within 30 days of receipt of complete and accurate application by the
So
building commissioner.
on the
Yeah.
color photographs, that should be, and there should be renderings for new construction. Because this is assuming the signs are all on existing buildings.
Isn't that in 3, such drawings shall be to a legible architect scale?
I'm thinking
That
that that's like elevations.
Okay.
photograph of the facade. I'm thinking three-dimensional,
Right,
not two-dimensional.
right,
So,
three-dimensional
like,
rendering on the building,
I kind of,
visualized on
yeah,
the building.
because I kind of thinking that the way I read those above, I read those as two-dimensional, because when you say to an architect's scale, normally you're talking about a two-dimensional drawing.
Right.
So I just think it's good to be explicit that we also require
3D,
three-dimensional.
that's a good point, because the depth and width. Okay, anything else from that? And again, this is,
So now the way it works is if the building commissioner rejects a sign application, it goes to either the Board of Appeal or Select Board, do we know?
I think the building commissioner refers it to the sign review committee,
Okay.
is how it's,
So the selectmen only have review over lit signs? Is that their
an appeal.
purview?
Actually, so if they
can
get
do an appeal
denied.
too, right?
So that if they get denied at the sign review committee, which, for example, the digital billboard for the fitness center, which started off as the Sleepy's mattress sign on the expressway, that was an appeal, that was granted by the select board. It was, they went and appealed it, they were denied, and now that applicant comes back every year, and the sign review committee denies them every year. So they just haven't changed it. It's like caught in this cycle, but they're grandfathered in, they would be able to keep that sign, but
Not that I want to take on more work, but do you think the select board's the appropriate board to hear these?
well, that's what I'm going to get to. I was thinking it would be, the ZBA might be the better path forward for
planning
appeal. You'd have to have a public hearing. I mean, it could come back to us,
Because
but
the selectmen normally don't have public
Public hearings.
hearings. So I would think that the neighbors would want to say,
Usually an
Gotta be
appeal
heard.
would go to the Board of Appeals.
that's what I was
So
thinking.
I would think that's where
That's
it
the
would
better.
go.
That's what I was thinking, that's what I was going to recommend when we get to that point on the authority.
As far as like the design, like if there's a project that's subject to our review, like commercial buildings over 600 square feet or these others, right? We do provide some feedback on signage, right? But they still have to go through their signage review package. So do we, when those come in though, like, is there anything about those kind of signs, like for the memory care facility contemplated in here? Do we know? Meredith,
sorry.
like, it talks about types of signs. If we go back for a moment to well, maybe it's going to going forward, there'll be types of signs. But there was, for types of signs, the submission requirements are different for standing signs versus an awning or a wall mount sign.
I think it does get into that a little bit. It talks about protruding signs or different.
But I'm thinking those, I forget what they're called now, but the kind like at the memory care facility where it's out in the landscape. There's
Right.
there's a term for that kind of sign, and I'm just not remembering it. But do you remember if that's in here? Because
It talks about setback, it
we'll
talks
get
about
to it then.
size. I think when we get, yeah, let's. So time limit, yes.
Kathleen O'Donnell has her hand raised.
Oh. Yes, Kathleen, yeah, welcome Kathleen, yes.
Hi, I just, on the sign thing, I just wanted to say that the current process is that if you get denied by the building commissioner, it goes to the Board of Appeals. Not to the select board, not to the sign committee. As I said, it's an appeal of a denial of a building permit. So that's the process for it.
That-
There's no jurisdiction of the planning board for the denial. I mean, any denial of a building permit for anything goes to the Board of Appeals, not the planning board.
Right. No, I think what's happened is it goes to the sign review committee, and then if they deny a sign, that has been going to the select board. But if it's a special permit, such as the one that's being proposed on the 30th, it's under a special permit because it's a business in a residential district. So it's under, the business itself is under a special permit.
I don't think that's how it's coming to us, but, you know, as I said, it's because there's already signs on that building.
Yeah.
We did hear the one for the Heart Dental. That was one that I sat on. Rockland Trust, I think they just switched out the writing from Blue Hill Bank or whatever that was before. So I don't think that went anywhere. But this is a new sign on the north side of the building. Right. So they applied for a building permit, they applied to install it, and that was denied, and they were told they had to come to us. So that's how that process happened.
Yeah, to go off the Kathleen.
I don't know
the way
if
it
this
came-
kind of the sign committee at all, or the select board.
Yeah, there've been
So
recently
it came before the sign review committee.
Okay.
And originally, the whole thing had started a couple years back with the Heart Dental, and I guess they had got rejected, had to go to the select board, got it appealed, and then accepted. And so we had actually been like working with the building owners because they're now letting other residents put up signs. But because there was like this initial agreement where there could only be one sign, we had them actually come to a sign review meeting with the Russian School of Mathematics applicants
Yeah.
to kind of appeal their sign review decision. So where we had left it was that the entire building owner was supposed to get that denial, go before ZBA, and kind of open it up so that we could get the Russian school to get their sign up there. So the Russian school itself was approved, but we need to deny it to open it up to get them on there.
Oh, okay. But I just wanted to sort of go to Maggie's comment about the fact that, we have a process and we can't delay things because the planning board might want to revise the sign committee. When we have boards of appeals have specific time frames by which they have to make their decisions, hold their hearings, make decisions. And so we can't, postpone that while you folks work on a new sign bylaw.
No, that wouldn't be the case. That all is going forward, and the sign review committee is not being changed at all. Although in this, I think it says there's 4 members, and I believe there's 5, which Tim or planning staff sits in on. So that it doesn't affect, it wouldn't change that at all.
Yeah, according to section 275-3.3, 3,
Business district uses.
actually 4, it says appeal to select board, an applicant, planning board, sign review committee, or person aggrieved by a permit issued by the building commissioner or denial of a permit may appeal to the select board in the same manner as an appeal from an enforcement order of the building commissioner may be taken to the Board of Appeals. The select board shall establish specific procedures for such appeals. In the event of an appeal, the building commissioner, after consultation with the sign review committee, may authorize temporary advertising signs during continuance of an appeal. So that's in the existing zoning.
And I think it should go to the ZBA. I don't necessarily feel like the planning board needs to hear that.
But this language would be replaced by what we're reviewing right now, tonight, right? So,
Yeah, I don't see how you folks have jurisdictions over signs, is all I'm trying to say. So,
Yeah.
I mean, on a project that you've already got before you, for a building and that sort of thing, yes, you're sort of doing a brand new building, you would be controlling some part of the signs, but I don't think that you've got jurisdiction over, this type of situation.
I don't think we have it over an appeal.
It's
That's not what
yeah, that's
my
not.
point was.
so we were just actually, I think Kathleen, thinking about whether this makes sense for it to be appealed to the select board rather than the Board of Appeal and on a sign.
I don't know how the select board has the ability to seek relief from a zoning bylaw.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how the select board can do that.
All right, so you agree that it should go to the Board of Appeal?
Yeah, because in
Yeah.
the bylaw right now, it's an accessory use.
Right, okay.
The zoning
Okay.
bylaw.
So we do agree on that.
With
so
that, with
yeah.
you on that, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kathleen.
sorry.
That's all right, thank you very much, because
It's helpful.
it is helpful. Okay. All right, so we were application,
So I was looking at design review, and it says, all signs requiring a sign permit or special permit under the provisions of this section shall require the review of the sign review committee. So do you recall seeing where it says a sign permit's required?
there is
Is that coming?
language, yes,
Okay,
and there's
So we can
authority
keep
for the
going,
permit,
okay.
yeah. So that's, so application rejection,
Hey, what page are you on now?
10.
I'm ahead of you.
So F, permit revocation. So that's the building commissioner there. Expiration date. Penalties. This is where I also thought this should be the building department. Fines that establish, I don't know that the Board of Selectmen want to establish fines. That seems like that's more in the building department?
Shouldn't there be a predetermined chart of fines?
We could,
Because I had a situation.
how are the,
um,
yeah, how are they,
and-
how
and
does
it
the
is-
building department?
It's, and I was not happy with the way that my fine was determined by the building inspector. After we got our special permit, we were in the process of installing our drainage system. And we were fined by the building inspector because we started our machine 15 minutes before. That fine was $1,000. I got fined for a failure to notify. That was fined by $1,000. And I had a fine of a truck being on the property, which was a fine of $1,000. The original fine was $5,000 per offense. I had to hire a lawyer. The lawyer had to talk to town council, and we negotiated it down to $1,000 per offense. And so
There should be consistency with fines,
There should be
yeah.
consistency, and there should be a chart.
Question,
like
yeah,
a schedule of
Yes,
fines.
like a
yes.
schedule of fines,
And
yeah.
so I think that has to,
We should find out
Tighten
more.
up.
So, but I don't think necessarily the selectmen the select board now, want to take that on, but we can talk to the building department to see if that would make sense. All signs requiring a sign permit or special permit under the provisions, so sign permit under the provisions of this section shall require the review of the sign review committee. So the sign review committee shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, that's how we do it now, on an annual basis. The committee will have, this says 4 members, one of whom is the Director of Planning and Community Development, and others whom are residents or owners of businesses within the town. At least one member shall be an architect, urban designer, or planner, which is the case on that board. The members shall choose the chairman annually. The committee shall act as an advisory board according to the requirements of this section. So this all seems, this process, section C, is consistent with how they're operating at this point. So I don't think there was nothing there that needed to be changed. Criteria for review. These are all, again, I think what is currently how it's operating. With the sign review committee's review and advisory, recommendation of proposed signs shall be based on the following. The listing those, number 2, the sign handbook, to be updated from time to time by the Board of Selectmen.
So
That's-
why would they be the ones updating it?
That's what that was one of the,
And before you get to that, on number C3, I'm wondering, who is the advisory recommendation to? Is it to the select board? Is it to the building commissioner? It says it's
Yeah.
advisory. So the building commissioner is granting the permit, right?
so I do think that is a difference in here that we would want to correct. I don't think they make an advisory, and Cheyenne, you might want to add to this. They make the decision, I believe, or are they making a recommendation to the building inspector?
So, kind of both. Like, they all go around and approve it, it's just someone to that, and then the chair writes an approval, and they send it off to the building commissioner.
To the building
After
commissioner.
that, I think they take, yeah. So we make an approval and recommendation.
Great, okay.
So the guidebook should be updated by the sign review committee, at least as a recommendation, and maybe, it seems to me, personally, I think like, where these go on buildings and so forth is sort of tied to design guidelines like we have in our
Yeah.
business districts, not just sort of, it is. So it seems like any update to this should be consistent with those design guidelines in Milton Village and
Maybe
East
that-
Milton
maybe
Square.
that we should
And
be-
then, well, they can make the recommendation, but we should review it. I just think we should have a review in it because of the design guidelines.
Right, and we also want to make sure it's tied to the zoning.
Right. So it needs to, because it needs to be tied to the zoning, maybe it's the sign review committee in conjunction with the planning board or advisory to the
Yeah.
planning board. It's just, again, I'm not sure where the Board of Selectmen role in here makes the most sense because they're not really reviewing
That's what I had
kinds
put,
of
either
applications for projects in these districts.
maybe the planning board and the sign review committee. Because once,
And these, all these references to the Board of Selectmen should be changed to Select Board anyway.
yeah.
I'm just reading from them, but it really should change.
So considerations of how proposed signs, related context of the facade of the building, buildings in the immediate vicinity to the sign, the basic pattern of the street front to which the sign is oriented, the sign brightness, style, height, and colors, and other pertinent structures and elements in the immediate vicinity. It goes on to say, actually, a lot of this is in our site plan review process, too. Reflect the character of the building to which is it attached or associated with, which is also sort of in the handbook. Displaying graphic symbols which are legible to both vehicle operators and pedestrians. So all of that. And the recommendation, the sign review committee's advisory recommendation shall take one of the following forms.
So I think here, we could add that it needs to somehow consider the design guidelines when located within districts that have design guidelines. Because it might not be in their handbook, but it's in our design guidelines.
That's true.
Do
So,
we need this if we have design guidelines? Can we try to simplify the process?
no, because there's so many signs that
There's-
aren't in place, that are in places that don't have
Have
guidelines.
Yeah.
That's why I think we say in,
Or
You-
just copy the language to make it consistent.
Or say refer to,
yeah, I would say where it says here on page 11, that the consideration of how the proposed sign relates to, and the first, we could put the first bullet point is design guidelines for those signs located within overlay districts for which there exist design guidelines or something like that.
Are we saying that in any district where there are design guidelines, the design guidelines, if there are a conflict, supersede?
I'm just saying that they should consider them here. I think we could leave it to the review of the sign review committee, honestly. But, because there are only guidelines there.
If you're an applicant and there's a conflict, which is the governing document?
Yeah.
I think this,
Governs?
I think the sign review governs.
This will be.
Ours are the
this will be a
suggestions.
bylaw.
Yeah.
This will be, but this gives them the authority to consider that as part of their overall consideration. Because I think there's different things that they consider when looking at the signage, challenges that an store owner might have on what type of sign. So Cheryl, can you say that again?
Well, I was just thinking, so consideration of how the proposed sign relates to requirements, or maybe it's not requirements, it's, I'm trying to think of the right word, but let me just use requirements for the moment. Requirements contained within design guidelines at locations for which they exist, or something like that. I mean, it can be improved, but I'm trying to.
All right, let's think about that language.
So it needs to consider those design guidelines.
Like principles instead of requirements?
Do you remember how they're phrased in the design guidelines?
I'll just say how it relates to the design guidelines.
Criteria, or how it relates to the
Planning board.
design
Criteria for
guidelines?
design guidelines.
Criteria, okay.
Criteria for design guidelines. Within districts provided.
It's just this, as an applicant, this is kind of,
22 pages, right?
yeah. Right,
And the
so,
handbook's actually helpful, I like it.
Yeah.
It's just-
yeah.
It's a lot here for a sign.
It's a lot for just a regular person like myself.
Yeah, but this, if you read this, anything in our current zoning is, even for professionals, is difficult. I stopped into the building department last week to talk to them about something, and I said, we'd like to, the board's talking about codification, and they said how much they would support that. I said, it's confusing, and they said, you don't need to tell us, basically, right? And they get calls from architects all the time who are used to reading these things, zone, trying to design towards it, and ours is so confusing that, professionals who deal with this every day are having to, look for the interpretation of the local official, because that's who gets to make the decision, but it should be better than that. So, Meredith, I think just put something in like we talked about,
Criteria
and
for
we can
design
think
guidelines.
about
Yeah.
some fine-tuning of that language, right?
Okay, all right. So recommendations, so this is just the process, the different forms, the recommendation that the sign review committee will make, and then the appeal and special permits, right of appeal, any applicant for a sign permit, any person who has been ordered by the building commissioner to incur expense in connection, and any person dissatisfied with any refusal, order, or decision of the building inspector, and this is what's happened, I think this says may appeal to the Board of Selectmen.
So we're gonna say Board
we're
of
changing
Appeals.
ZBA. Within 20 days from the date of which refusal, order, or decision after notice given to the public and abutting property owners and/or residents, the ZBA, I think, should hold a public hearing. Applying the standards in subsection 6D, the board shall affirm, annul, or modify such refusal. The action of the building commissioner may be annulled or modified only by a majority of decision of the, and I would put in ZBA board again. The action of the commissioner is modified or annulled. If the action is annulled, the building commissioner shall issue sign permit in order in accordance with the decision of the board. So
then again, the next one, the special permit granting authority
I
should be the
changed the
ZBA.
ZBA. I put the ZBA, yeah. shall serve as the special permit granting authority for all special permits and signs, and shall consider request for special permits in accordance with this section, in section da-da-da-da. Okay. Circumstances in which a special permit may be sought. Special permits may be considered and issued for any request for relief of the requirements of this section. However, special permits may not be issued to allow those signs indicated in section A. And those are the
Prohibited signs.
prohibited signs. I would change, again, any permit, ZBA, all the select board ZBA language here. And I didn't have, and then under required findings, I just changed that language also to ZBA.
Someone found where they're required.
Required
We'll get to it,
findings.
I
That's
guess.
So there is a design review, size, shape, design review prior to granting of a special permit by the ZBA, ZBA. The sign review committee shall submit an advisory recommendation on the special permit to the board, and that would be to the ZBA. Such recommendation shall address compliance of the sign with subsection 6E. An unfavorable report of the sign review committee shall indicate which of the findings were not met and shall state what modifications to the sign or signs could be made to render a favorable report. Failure of the sign review committee to make such a report within 30 days from the date of the submission of the application materials to the sign review committee shall be deemed by the ZBA to constitute a favorable report. Okay. So now, this is the exempt signs. So these seemed pretty straightforward. Except for on the language, under 8, that would be signs located in property owned by the town. I guess that should stay the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board,
Probably.
but we should, all of these
Change to
change
Select
to
Board.
Select Board. And, great. Signs sanctioned by the Town of Milton Historical Commission, which display historic information about the building's property not exceeding, those are just the historic plaques. Those are, the Historical Commission doesn't have any jurisdiction over any, we don't have local historic districts, so the commission does not have any say on those. So these are all the exempt. Then you get down to the prohibited signs.
Just under 10 there,
Yeah.
signs within the town's right-of-way should be the select board also. So they have Board of Selectmen in here, but I think that should stay select board, right?
And what number was that? I'm sorry.
On 10 on page
Oh, yeah, yep.
15.
Yep, but that should be select board. And right below it, too. Select board. Okay. All right, so 2, I wasn't sure what Tim meant by this. Any new or existing sign not erected pursuant to and in accordance with the requirements of this bylaw. Period. Any new existing,
Are you in the prohibited?
Oh,
On the
so it's just
prohibited.
saying you can't erect a sign on your own. That's what I read that.
okay. And then it says see blank for guidance on non-conforming signs. So that would be section,
Goes back to
We don't-
where he had something in here for non-conforming signs, right? But
we'll have to look at that section, okay.
So it seems to me they're prohibited as new signs, but there are the ones that were predating this bylaw, right?
So it would be section 4,
1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that the
4A, for just existing.
4A, I'm sorry, yeah.
C4A. Okay. Signs which incorporate any manner of flashing, moving, or intermittent lighting, excluding public service signs showing time and temperature. These include promotional beacons, laser lights, or images, wind signs, including banners, pennants, spinners, streamers, and other wind-actuated components, mechanically activated signs other than rotating barber poles, which I don't think we have any more of those.
Sadly,
I know.
I love them.
I know. Any sign which advertises or calls attention to any products, businesses, or activities which are no longer sold.
That's just a typo there, all right, which are not longer sold.
Yes, that's what I was like with that. No longer sold or carried on at any particular premises. It should be premise, not premises, if it's particular, right? At any particular premise?
Yeah.
No S. No such sign shall remain in place or vacated premises for more than, or maybe it is premises. I have to double check that. Now I'm questioning myself. Vacated premises for more than 90 days from the date of the vacancy commenced. Portable signs, except for sidewalk signs as defined in section, to look at that, where that was, of this bylaw, not permanently affixed, anchored, or secured to the ground or structure on the lot it occupies. Signs advertising businesses, services, or activities located at different premises from the premises on which the sign is located, except street banners permitted by the Board of Selectmen, which would be approved. That is that type of banner. I'm thinking of all the veterans banners that are up right now. So I think that is a select board. So that should just be changed to select board. As defined in section 8A, window signs which cover more than 25% of the window or which obstruct the middle third of the window or door such that eye level view through the window is blocked. Signs erected so as to obstruct any door, window, or fire escape on a building. Signs constructed, erected, or maintained on the roof of a building or which extend above the roof plate line. Signs in the right-of-way other than those belonging to a government, public service agency, or railroad. Signs which are pasted, attached, mounted, or located on a tree, utility pole, fence, or structures such as an overpass, bridges, or other similar structure. Signs posted or attached to other signs are prohibited unless such subsidiary portions are an integral part of the total sign design. Signs not in good repair, in violation codes, or containing or exhibiting broken panels, visible rust, visible rot, damaged support structures, or missing letters. This is where the height comes in. Maggie, you were asking about this, the measurement of the sign area. That's included in here, measurement of sign height, ground signs, building signs, location, structure, and design standards. So this is what ground signs, I don't know if this would be what you were referring to. Unless more restrictive setback is specified otherwise in this section, all ground signs, whether permanent or temporary, shall be set back at least 15 feet from the nearest property line, whether or not said line abuts a public or private streetway.
Which one, where are you reading from?
Sorry, I'm on 10 now.
On which page though?
On 17?
So, Where's the square footage calculation? It says the measurement.
So that's actually, yeah.
Okay.
There is coming
Okay.
it comes a little bit later.
Can we put it here
Yeah, so that,
so we don't have to be
Yeah.
flipping back and forth?
It's,
That's my big pet peeve on these documents. I just would like to.
well, that's one
read it
thing,
right
because Tim did prohibited illumination in an illumination section, but it's not in the prohibited section. So that should be moved.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's just
But-
keep going, I guess.
Yeah, and then because I think there will be some things to move. So measurement, sign area, structure, generally, structure, ground signs, setback, corner clearance, right of way.
So, sorry, I'm back on
Yeah,
the
sorry.
setback on the ground signs.
Yeah.
15 feet, is that what we've approved, or some of our memory care and daycare facilities, have they been 15 feet back?
I never paid attention to it, to be honest with you.
Just
I just thought
thinking,
that
like,
was good.
we should look at it
Right.
just to see if that's the right
We should, yeah.
number. Or they're going to be looking
Because I
at
think-
some variances or appeals.
Yeah, because there could be things like I'm thinking about when the hospice was installed. I don't think that's 15. Maybe it is, but I don't know if
Yeah,
that's 15
probably
feet.
15.
Maybe roughly.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
we should-
memory clinic couldn't go back any further because of the wetlands, I think. That was right on the
Right.
curb cut almost.
I think we should take a look at what those couple that we've approved that haven't filed for their signage yet, probably. And if this would impact them, I don't know.
Yeah, good. Corner clearance, right of way, no sign or part thereof. Way, compliance with building code, maintenance, installation. Okay, that's right.
So the installation, none painted or posted directly on the exterior wall. You know, historically, their signs were painted onto the sides of walls, and you still see them as a historic feature in some buildings. So, I guess I wonder if that's a good requirement.
Well, I think where we see them in our business districts.
Like if you think about Abbey Park has the mural inside, that's painted directly onto the, I don't know if that's considered
Yeah.
a sign or art or something else, but what if they wanted to put Abbey Park as there on that, as part of that? There is a certain style of the.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It makes sense.
Some of the old mill buildings,
Yeah.
but
And whether that would make sense in Milton Village, for example.
Actually, was 2 Elliott going to put a mural behind where the parking was? Mm-hmm. Wasn't that
I
part of
think
his
they are,
rendering?
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with, but to your point,
is that considered a sign, though?
I don't know. but
That's more of I would say a piece, like artwork. When I think of Abbey Park as being artwork, but you're right, like, what if they wanted to paint Abbey Park on, like, in a certain style?
it would be a shame to send the message that we don't want that.
Yeah, I don't think that would be considered a sign, though.
Okay.
Well, I think it'd be worth going back and look like you suggested, Jim, at what was proposed for 2 Elliott. Because I can see like the Webb Mill building, where if they did the brew pub that they're talking about, doing something on the side of one of those buildings and having it be considered signage. And it would be appropriate there.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not facing the street. What does it matter? It just says on any wall. But if it's a wall on an alleyway,
Right.
what would be the
I
harm
mean,
in that?
they're, in many historic brick buildings, you'll find old faded ones.
They're the coolest.
So maybe we take out that first line and just have all signs must be painted, posted, or otherwise securely attached.
But then all signs must be painted to an intermediary, so removable surface is what you're saying. I think you could say sign, I don't think you can take it out entirely without revising the second sentence, but what you could say is without express approval or something, because you'd want it to be reviewed for the circumstances. So you're calling attention to it may or may not be approved. I don't know if that's the right language, but
I like where you're going with it, though.
Or signs, say that, because you could say signs may be painted,
so
signs shall be painted unless approved,
I said without express approval, which,
without express approval, yeah. By the sign review committee.
right.
Yeah, I think what Tim was writing is to protect against, a rash of painted or applied signs, Because there are some locations where it is probably really attractive and nice to have, but there's more locations that you don't want that.
Well, do you think this covers the protection of it, I think?
I
Yeah,
don't
with
know,
the-
I'm not sure, but I just feel like we should
Yeah.
definitely protect against that,
Yeah, I kind of think of it as part of the overall design package, so it needs to be looked at in the context of what's being proposed. So like what's appropriate, let's say for the 2 Elliott would be different than what would be appropriate for, let's just say the Masonic Building, for example. Or for something on High Street, it's like.
And would that painting have to go to the Historical Society?
No,
They could just paint on
Yeah.
any outside old building in ruin,
we don't have a
Like what?
jurisdiction,
or,
yeah, we wouldn't, it's not a local historic district, so we don't have,
Plus, I don't think I've ever seen a mural, excuse me,
Yeah.
on anything other than an old brick building. I've never seen it on clapboards or shingle or anything. It's like, it's just fitting to something old, like 2 Elliott.
We don't have that many buildings that it would be
don't.
fitting for.
don't.
We have some, there's a few.
okay, I like the Cheryl, what Cheryl added to that.
And I think,
Sorry to interrupt you, Mary.
and I think what you could do is you could have their handbook be more explicit about it, like where it's appropriate, what type of application. Because I just looked through it now, I don't see it addressed in there right now.
Okay, so 19, and we can just try to move through this quickly, because I don't want to keep us too late. We have a couple of other things, and if we want to break at any time, tell me. But the illumination permitted, externally illuminated signs may be externally illuminated by white, steady, stationary light, shielded and directed downward solely at the sign. Reverse lit signs may be reverse lit, illuminated by white light only. And I'm trying to think of what that looks like, Cheryl. What comes to mind when you,
Reverse lit would be something where it's like lit
Back
from the behind. So let's just say like letters were cut out and you had like on a white acrylic behind it and then there's light within it. Or a channel letter, which has an acrylic and then the light's behind it. That's the way I understand.
is that the hospice? Does hospice have that?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go take a look.
yeah, I'd be curious, I'd love to see an example. Then prohibited, the following types of illumination shall be prohibited except as may be permitted by the issue, because it's what it says earlier is a special permit can be given except for what is prohibited. So maybe we need to take out this prohibited section here and just,
I'd put these in the special permit category.
ex-
Not a prohibited, but a special permit, right?
well, I think we want it, I think we want these in the prohibited section, because then the special permit section refers to except for the prohibited. So it means, so you can't, the special permit, there's a list of things that they can't give permits to.
I mean, to me, like, you don't
Like,
get a special
nobody
permit.
gets it.
Nobody gets it.
That's what we want.
Prohibited, right,
That's what we
nobody
want.
gets.
Because that's what we're getting right now is, and we don't have anything that
Eternally
protects us.
illuminated signs, though, aren't, in my mind, aren't necessarily all bad for all circumstances. I think we need to look at what some of these are.
So like, like Santander, we're starting to see them, like, the Santander sign, which East Milton Square residents really don't like.
Okay.
I guess I'd have to see,
Yeah, I have
what
to see
is
them.
so bad, why is a reverse lit sign
That's what I wanted to
permitted,
understand.
but an internally illuminated sign is not?
A lot of,
Well, if you look at a lot of this, this
to
whole
Google
thing
that.
is set up for like East Milton Square. But it's not like contemplating the kinds of signs that you see in other places, like, what about the gas stations?
So
What
that's
about the, like the memory care? It's like, if I look through this guidebook, there's nothing about ground-mounted signs or something where you're having to mount it not on a building face, but it does have this rock. But, I think it needs to think a little bit more comprehensively about all the types of signs that there are,
right.
and not just the ones that are mounted to historic, frame.
So I think what happens is, Wellesley, for example, does not allow any illuminated signs. I was listening, and it goes through their planning board, and they had a gas station, somebody was asking for a new sign, and they did not even allow uplit light. They had to have downlit lights, but no illuminated signs. And it changes the look of a town when you start seeing internally illuminated signs all over. It's a very different look when you drive through, and that's why you drive through like Andover Center, and you see the Santander Bank with gooseneck lighting, and now Milton, we have this huge, big, internally illuminated plastic sign, and it's a difference of a look, and it's being sensitive, I think, to the historic character of the town. If we can not have those, what just as it was very controversial was one of the gas station signs that on the Bassett Street side of that gas station did the pricing in the LED, the electronic, and it's on here. And now the gas station on across the street is now, they have just requested one, and they've been granted approval for, and they're going to be going up, they're going to put a new sign up, and they're putting these, it's the LED price signs. So they're the really bright price signs. And it's, when one sign, it's like, okay, is that so bad? It's when you start seeing all of a sudden, and once you are allowing them, you're going to have others and say, well, this is fine, this is,
I know, because as a business owner, you get a little annoyed
because the sign
when
review
you
can't.
see that other people are allowed to do things and there's no enforcement, and
So-
it really is very annoying.
So the sign review committee is put in a difficult position where they've now been recently approving more internally lit signs, and it changes the look of a business district to do that. And so that's why internally illuminated open face channel letters, signs fabricated with letters, numbers, designs, or images consisting of an exposed or visible light source emitted from the face of a sign, including but not limited to incandescent and fluorescent bulbs, LED price signs, LED and digital displays, and neon tubes.
I think once we get public with this, we're going to need some photographs of the kinds of signs we're talking about
Yeah.
here. And
That's,
I think we should have those sooner rather than later, so if people can get out and take a look at these things, that if anybody can photograph them at night. Because
you're right. I think that's,
this is a whole class of sign, and, you know, maybe some of them make more sense, like a large sign on a gas station, you don't want a certain type, but on a different kind of building, or even on the ground mounted sign, it might be okay to have the type. I mean, this is prohibiting a whole class of sign, and I just think we want to make sure we understand what we're doing here.
And is it by height? Because,
No,
so the gas stations, are they asking for, you know, a 40-foot?
well, you'll see, we will get to that. There is a height limit on sign when we get into the business uses.
Because, again, maybe I'm dating myself, but I love like an old gas station sign lit up. You know,
old-
just like my favorite sign in the whole of Milton is the Pepsi sign. I love it when they light it up in the fall. And that's
Yeah.
an illuminate. So if it's an old school style,
Like yeah.
then I like a vintage style.
Right.
And to your point, because it is a historic, our historic
Right.
railway village, or Milton Village. So if the sign is of a certain
Vintage,
vintage, then I think that should be okay,
yeah.
perhaps.
Like the Walter Baker chocolate. You know,
Yes, I
that's
love that sign.
iconic.
Yeah,
You know, that's.
yeah, that's right across the river. So,
that's mounted on top of the building, which
Yeah.
we're not allowing
Yeah,
in
which
this.
is-
yeah,
It's a-
but that's in Dorchester too.
Yeah. It's in
But I love the
I mean, you
Pepsi.
look at the extra space storage sign, right? That's a pretty big.
That was the first that was the first one when that one,
And it's big.
and it's huge. And that got approved, yeah. So,
So I think we need to do a
Samples.
survey of samples of different contexts, because I think if you can't write it for one district only, you know?
Right,
So we
yeah.
have to think it through.
we have to use examples, yeah, and
You know, I have a memory of a project some years ago that we built in Connecticut, and there was a sign bylaw that was preventing my client from putting the sign up that they wanted. And I'm not, it's just
Yeah.
something for consideration.
yeah.
What the client did, because we had, the corner of the building was entire glass, they hung a sign inside
No
the
way.
building, which was not considered signage. Do you know what I mean?
Because you can, that's what this, and
Just bring it up,
Yeah,
not
'cause-
only because we want to be careful that we don't allow a loophole for
right,
that to happen. The effect was just the same, do you know what I mean? As if it was on the glass on the outside, but it was suspended on the inside. And the authority having jurisdiction had no ability to say no.
I don't know if this addresses it, but some bylaws have a primary sign that can be a certain size. You know how we looked at that Goddard School had their primary sign, and then they wanted these other things?
Yeah.
So you can make the primary sign allowed to be, you know, one size, and then you can maybe allow secondary signs to be another, so that you can prioritize, so that you don't get this situation where you get signs slapped on all the facades if it's, you know, visible to the public.
I think that's. Is
that coming?
That's coming too.
Okay.
But, and we can, you know,
So I do think these whatever this reverse lit, if that's a definition, needs to come somewhere, and the internally illuminated, and I do think
And
we
we'll
should
look
think
through.
about some of these with respect to size
yep, yeah.
and examples.
And I'll look through to see if they have this. Okay, so we'll just skim through these. Then time, unless a business establishment is open to the public, no sign shall be illuminated between the hours of 11 PM and 6 AM. And that's, usually what is required by the sign review committee. Intensity, exterior illumination of signs shall be shaded, shielded, or directed, that they shall not reflect or shine on or into a neighboring premises or into any public street. The intensity of such light shall be deemed acceptable if it does not exceed a factor of 3 above the ambient light intensity at any point on the ground when measured with an incident light meter, and the following procedure.
So as an applicant, how would you know what that is?
So typically,
And does the town have a
light meter?
Well, if normally your sign fabricator can probably provide that information.
The electrical inspector probably has a light meter.
Yeah.
yeah. So then it goes into, so that was business districts, then it goes into the residential districts, because we were going to cross over this. A sign of not more than 2 square feet in an area displaying the street number, the name of the occupant, the property, and the historical references, if any, without need for a permit under this bylaw. A sign pertaining to the lease or sale of a lot or building without the need for a permit under this bylaw, provided that such signs do not exceed a total area of 9 square feet, nor more than 1.5 feet in any dimension, until at such time as all lots, apartments, condominiums, or houses have been rented or sold.
That's an obscure bylaw.
So sorry, go ahead. I think I jumped ahead.
That's all right. That's one contractor sign not exceeding 12 feet or more in area, otherwise provided, maintained on the property while construction is in progress, and containing information relevant to the project. Such sign shall not require a permit under this bylaw and shall be removed within 3 business days after completion of construction. One sign identifying each public entrance to a subdivision or multifamily development, such as apartments, condominiums, or townhouses, of not more than 9 square feet in area, not more than 3.5 feet in any dimension. In addition, each family unit may carry a single sign of not more than 1 square foot without time limit.
So one thing I would say here is we've got child care facility, memory care facility, hospice, hospital, businesses, and we haven't covered them at all. And we should.
Yeah. In the residential districts?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what the zoning is for Milton Hospital, but,
I
residential.
didn't get where you were going, but now I get it. I'm sorry. I was like, I understand now. I get it.
Yeah,
I just didn't hear you, so.
Sorry.
Because we've had projects that we've reviewed where we've
Yeah.
seen these signs, right? So, and again, I don't know how big those signs were that we approved anymore, but we should look.
yeah, we
9
should
square
add something.
feet. And 3.5 feet in any direction, they're bigger than that, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
There's definitely bigger than that on the memory care.
How would you categorize those?
I would just, commercial uses, because they are commercial uses.
In a residential?
Yeah. Well, I think we've got the multifamily already covered, right, with number 4. So then I think number 5, which Tim has said that needs to be, is not just non-conforming business, though. I would call it commercial uses
In residential.
and non-conforming. I mean, you could take it a step further and say even protected uses, because like a house of worship is protected, the daycares are protected, and they have signs.
This does, well, that's in here too. Tim covered everything. We'll get religious and educational nonprofit institutions.
All right,
So
then.
that could be, yeah.
So then the only thing maybe is it's the memory care is not protected, the hospice is not protected, the landscape. So then I guess the businesses and commercial uses is probably fine.
Protected. And we would need to determine what that would be, what those,
I think a business should get to have the comparable to the business district.
I agree.
So if there's a
And
way to
that's where-
write that here.
we could, because that's going to come next, the business district. And that's where the specific detail signs, the measurements are included here.
I mean, we can, once we read through this, see if there's anything that we think is not appropriate, but otherwise I think it should be the same.
So commercial uses and non-conforming protected in residential zones are subject
To business
To
district
business district requirements.
requirements.
Okay. All right, so business districts, and we're almost there. Total sign area, unless otherwise here and afterward provided, the total area of all signs erected on a lot shall not exceed 1.5 square feet in area for each horizontal linear foot of the building face parallel to or substantially parallel to street line. However, if the primary facade is on a parking area, then said facade shall be used to determine the amount of allowable signage. Principal signs, no more than 2 principal signs shall be allowed for each business establishment. A principal sign may be a flat wall sign, a projecting sign, or a freestanding sign. The total area of a all flat wall signs shall not exceed 50 square feet on any one wall of the business establishment. Flat wall signs shall not project more than 12 inches from the facade of the wall. Subject to the approval of the building inspector, a flat wall sign may be located anywhere on a wall of a building, provided that it does not conceal any part of a window and that its length does not exceed 7/8 of the facade of the business establishment. A projecting sign shall not extend beyond the curb line or more than 50 inches, exclusive of any supporting structure from the building. A projecting sign shall not be less than 10 feet from the ground level at the base of the building over a vehicular way, 10 feet over a sidewalk or a lesser distance, so long as public safety is not endangered, nor more than 20 feet from the ground level to the top of the sign. Allowable area of a projecting sign will be computed as 1/2 square foot for each horizontal linear foot of the facade of the establishment on which it hangs. Such signs shall not extend above the building, nor be more than 12 feet in area. So freestanding signs shall not exceed 50 square feet of an area when the
So 12 square feet is like 2 feet by 6 feet. That would be like a tiny sign on a big building. So again, it's like
yeah, which would
these
more than
blade signs, so it's like a projecting sign out, but I mean, I don't know if you think about like you want signs on a building that are sort of proportionate to the scale of the building. So like if you have a big, massive brick building and you have this little sign on it, it's not going to look right.
Well, you think of the towns that, I think of the projecting signs, which again, I'll use Andover Center, but they do have, they're not huge, but they're very charming, it adds charm to it, just the way they're applied to the building. I think it's in our design guidelines that we actually do like those signs, but you don't want it to be a massive if it's an extended sign. That would be,
I'm trying to picture a projected sign. I don't
It's like a blade sign that comes out from the,
look at it. Tilt
like the
or
queue
just-
up in Marblehead, like when you walk around
Face of the
Marblehead.
building, and the sign goes this way.
Oh, I'm
face of the
sorry,
building.
yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we should do a mock-up of some example, different signs.
So my only concern when you put in language that says, for the non-conforming commercial uses shall be subject to the business requirements. What if the businesses aren't, the interior of a business isn't seen from the street? Because I think, Cheryl, you used something, a phrase that said visible to the public. If it's not, what happens if it's not visible to the public?
Then
Meaning it's inside the building?
No, it's still outside the building, but there's enough space around the building and away from the street, so any passerbyers on the streets can't actually see your outside signs.
So this is my point about how some of this is really thought of as like East Milton Square and not like all kinds of signs. So it's almost like some of these requirements should be specified that way. So 4 signs on buildings in, the business districts. Because if you think about Granite Ave, a sign that's 12 square feet is going to be like a little dot on that building versus where Fitness Unlimited is.
Yeah.
And we're trying to apply the same dimensional standard for that range of scales.
And I was thinking even memory care, so yes, we should have it for a certain sign size along Highland Street, but within the property of the memory care, they may want to have some signs directing, deliveries out back, and nobody from the public will be able to see it. It won't interfere with the public view. So would they have to come and get permission for all their interior signs?
Were directional signs
Direction.
exempt?
Covers directories in here. I remember looking for that.
are exempt,
They're exempt, okay.
yeah.
If they are not viewed from the public.
No, I think they're
Well.
just exempt. They-
The next page, 21.
Yeah, we're kidding. Tim is everything in here,
maybe I
I'm telling you.
should've
He
read
was very
Oh,
thorough.
good. Yeah, I didn't read it either.
He was very thorough.
Well, when you get over to, then this, I know there's a typo in here, but I
Yeah.
think he's thinking about in the business district. So if you go to, he's probably thinking about what you were thinking, Cheryl. Go to 21.
Okay.
And now he's talking about freestanding signs, but a freestanding sign shall not exceed 50 square feet of area when the establishment fronts on Route 2. So, I don't know, maybe this came from some language in another town, right? But
So for us, it would be like Granite Ave.
maybe, yeah, I'm thinking that
Yeah.
he was thinking of
Right.
scale, which is what Cheryl was talking about, or more than 25 square feet of area when the establishment fronts on a street other than Route 2, so
Exactly, that's
this is where you were going with.
where I was going, yeah.
Yeah, so
That's-
he was
Yeah.
thinking of creating language that allowed scale to be used.
So I think you could apply that to, we could think about whether that should apply to these other signs as well, but I'd like to kind of think
Think
about
about
these
that. Yeah,
scales.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Let's see if
good, yeah.
It's just finding the right language to describe that so it's appropriate,
Yeah. All right, so secondary signs, this discusses that. If a business establishment consists of more than one building, or if a building has secondary frontage on a street or parking area, a secondary sign may be affixed to one wall of each building or to the second side. Secondary signs shall not exceed 1 square foot for each horizontal linear foot of secondary frontage on a street or parking lot, and said area shall be limited to 50% of the area allowed for the primary sign. Directories where there are 3 or more businesses on a lot, or there are businesses without an entrance on the street frontage, a directory may be permitted for the purpose of traffic direction and control. The size of the directory shall not exceed 9 square feet plus 1.5 square feet per business establishment. Such a directory shall be included in the calculation of a total permitted sign area for the lot. Awning, retractable fabric awnings projecting from the wall of a building for the purpose of shielding the doorway or windows from the elements may include signage on the valance. Such signage shall not be included in the calculation of the total permitted sign area for the lot, provided that no lettering or symbol is greater than 6 inches in height. No awning may extend within 2 feet of a curb line. Temporary sale signs. In a business district, temporary signs advertising specials or promotions or sale of merchandise may be attached to or located only within the interior of a window or door and shall not require a permit under this bylaw or considered in calculating the total permitted sign area for the lot. Such signs must be registered with the building commissioner prior to their installation. Each establishment shall be limited to display such signs for a period of not exceeding 30 days, with no more than 3 such 30-day periods permitted calendar year. 30-day periods may be utilized consecutively. Signs painted on windows in a business district, script describing a product or theme and not including the name of the business. Such signage shall not require a permit under this bylaw or be included in the calculation of the total permitted sign area for the lot, provided that no lettering or symbol is greater than 6 inches in height. Sidewalk signs, 1 A-frame sandwich board per business premises shall be permitted, including with the public right-of-way, sidewalk only. In addition to the other signs permitted under Section 8, such signs shall not require a permit under this bylaw, subject to the following conditions. The sign shall only be displayed in front of businesses adjacent to the buildings, not only along the curb. The sign shall be displayed only during the months of May through October. The sign shall not exceed 24 inches in width and 48 in height. The sign shall not be made entirely of plastic, nor shall it be primarily devoted to a single product. The sign shall advertise the businesses and the goods and services available on the premises. The sign shall not protrude on the sidewalk in such a way as to obstruct pedestrian traffic or reduce the open sidewalk width to less than 4 feet. The sign shall be free of sharp corners, protrusions, and devices which could inadvertently cause injury. The sign must be constructed with a crossbar brace for stability. The sign must have sufficient strength to stand by itself. In response to specific safety concerns, the police department may prohibit sidewalk displays in designated areas during holiday parades or other specified times or days when sidewalk congestion is excessive. The sign may be displayed only during business hours and must be removed from the sidewalk thereafter. The building commissioner shall issue a sticker permit on an annual basis, which shall be attached to the interior of the sidewalk sign.
Wait, so is this saying that all A-frames need to actually get a permit?
So this sounds like something that they would leave out if it's left out for months
It's
at a time.
sticker permit.
I don't know. I don't know if we do that. If we do anything like that currently? We don't see many sidewalk signs here. I mean, occasionally I see Abbey Park and Navarra doing them.
I do
Did you-
one.
Yeah, I did one when I owned Ben's, and I put it
Yeah,
down on
I feel
Randolph
like-
Ave.
yeah.
I never got permission for it.
I
Did
know.
you leave it out? Was it
I
out
took it in
there?
every night. I left it out all day, then took it in every
They
night.
left mine out all night, seasonally.
Why don't we ask about that? Why don't we find out? Because that might be something that we might not
Yeah.
Like
a nice thing to
7-Eleven
offer.
does it.
Do they?
Yeah, down on Randolph Ave.
So let's put a question mark on
That's one of
that.
those ones that I get upset about because there's inconsistency.
Yeah, let's find out. Yeah,
The reverse lit is actually in the definitions, just if
it
anybody
is.
wants to read it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go there. Liability insurance shall be carried in evidence of some same may be requested of the building commissioner. Said insurance must cover personal injuries or property damage which may occur in such areas. I don't know how folks feel about this. I think most businesses carry liability insurance, so I don't know that we,
On signs, they want insurance
I
on,
think that's in case somebody trips over it or,
or this is specifically to A-frame signs.
yeah, if you're blocking the sidewalk and somebody falls into the street and gets hit by a car. That's where I think they're going with that.
I guess we can just leave it in and see
Yeah, I don't
if
see a problem with that, honestly.
most people would probably have that.
Yeah.
So last page, religious and educational nonprofit institutions. One sign including bulletin or announcement board, identification sign, or entrance marker is allowed for the principal entrance to the premises of a church, synagogue, or other religious institutions, or school, museum, library, or other not-for-profit organizations not exceeding 12 square feet in an area. One additional sign not exceeding 12 square feet in an area is also allowed if the establishment has frontage on a second public way. Up to 9 additional square feet of signage is also allowed to provide information to the users on the site, provided that no single sign exceeds 3 square feet. Restaurants, in addition to other sign permits permitted by this bylaw, restaurants and other food service establishments may post an actual menu on the building where the premises are located near the main entrance of the door of the establishment without obtaining a permit under this bylaw. I crossed off bed and breakfast because we don't currently allow them. I think he probably just put it in as a placeholder if we did. Gasoline service stations, one identification sign not to exceed, and this is, you were talking about height, Maggie, not to exceed 12 square feet in an area. Oh, this is not, sorry, that's the size. Product identification signs for gasoline services stations may be maintained, provided the total of said signs does not exceed 9 square feet in area, with no single sign to exceed 3 square feet in area. And then directional state traffic safety. Signs indicated entrance, exit, parking, or similar traffic directional information shall not exceed 3 square feet in area per sign, provided these signs are erected on the lot pursuant to a town or state regulation. They shall not be counted in the maximum sign number and sign area requirement for the lot. Signs indicated parking for specific businesses shall be limited to 1 sign per 5 spaces.
So one thing I would say is I didn't notice an explicit prohibition of billboards.
Which, that's the one thing that I
I mean, it
thought.
might be implicit, but it's not explicit.
Good point.
Right. So, chapter 113,
You
yeah.
imagine?
After all that,
And someone throws up.
Well, that's what I was surprised, because Tim said this will cover, like, when he was sending it to me, he said, we don't have a way of protecting us on billboards. But
it might be.
Section
It might be
113.
implicit because you're not allowing a rooftop mount or a size of a billboard, but
Yeah, but would it hurt to just put a clause in?
I just wouldn't, I think so too.
I think so too.
To be extremely
Yeah.
explicit about it.
Good catch.
Yeah,
So,
I would add, would we want to put that under prohibited?
I think so.
I think so.
Just put a simple, it's just, I don't think it needs to be lengthy.
And then that idea about the height of a sign. So if we're thinking about the gas stations again, like, I don't think any of the gas stations meet the requirements that are in here. you think about how much signage there is.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, you know, how is this derived, and does it reflect the kind of signage that's used in gas stations today? I don't know how different it is from 10 years ago, but it does seem like you wouldn't want to put something in here that has no bearing on any gas station kind of signage anywhere.
And why would a gas station need a lit sign if we're saying it has to be shut off at 11?
When do the gas stations close in East Milton?
And I don't think they shut off those pricing signs. Those are up and,
Well, I'm thinking the winter when it gets dark at 4. They need, I mean, all businesses will need lit
right.
signs.
yeah.
I
And
think-
It was 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I don't think they're open past that.
So it
Do they close off
should
those
it be tied in with their hours of operation and not just a straight 11 o'clock?
I think it is, doesn't it say,
No, it said 11 to
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
So
Doesn't
it
say
said 11
or.
to 6.
11 to
It's not-
6. Did it
Because
say
I-
or their hours? It
unless
may-
they're
it may-
open later, like Abbey Park or Novara could have their lights on later because they're open later, but
Maybe it did, let's see.
Because with the school on 138, didn't we say they had to shut their lights off at close of business?
An hour after, I think it
Or
was.
not, yeah. It was on a timer.
yeah. And that's what I think the sign review committee has been doing, is saying hours of operation or your lights should be turned off at that time. But I don't know.
Yeah, you're right, 11 to 6. Unless a business establishment is open to the public, no sign shall be illuminated between the hours of 11 and 6.
11 to 6 unless they're open later.
Later.
It doesn't say
No.
that. Oh, I guess
So,
that's
like,
implied, huh?
What page are you on?
I'm
So
on
like the
page
Goddard
19.
School.
Oh, yeah, right
3.
here. Unless
Public.
the business is
So I
open
guess
to
that's
the
true. If they're open at
public.
12, they can have their sign up.
Yeah. Oh, let's Google them. What's the Milton gas?
So if a gas station goes to self-serve...
They go to 11.
They do.
Milton Fuel, 11. Six. They open at 6.
Maybe
So that's this
maybe they're
time,
the
yeah.
reason- They're the reason
That's
why
funny.
this is written like
That's
this.
it, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I think everyone can look this over on their own, you know, and think about things that the billboards, absolutely, we want to.
Can this be sent to the sign review committee for their feedback before our next meeting if possible?
Yeah,
Well, the Shell gas station says it's open 24 hours.
So that was my thing. If they're going to self-serve, I think they can stay open. I don't know if the town allows it, but the state allows them to stay open 24 hours now. Because they're self-serve and no one has to pump your gas. So could they keep their lights on all night?
Well, would that mean like the citizens kiosk down in Milton Village can have lights on all night because you can go drive up to the ATM?
Actually, if I was a Citizens Bank customer, I would want a light there, right? To go
You
to
would
an
want a
ATM?
light, yeah,
At least
for
something in
safety,
motion.
yeah.
right.
And are all these lights dark sky compliant? These gas station lights?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So that's a bit unfair too. Everyone else has to be dark sky compliant, but they don't have to be.
But that's why. in
They
the-
would be grandfathered
so
in, right?
They are grandfathered in, so there's nothing we can do about it now. But going forward, we would be able to not have LED pricing lights on those. If we can do this in a way that's that prohibits these under that section 8. All right, so yeah, I'll send this over to John, and, because he's been through this from the beginning. It was actually, I had tried to get a design review committee established in Milton years ago and John Zikowitz was on it was the Central Lab Revitalization Group, and we couldn't get that passed. So the select board did establish the assigned review committee. And I had said, John, would you be the chair of it? So he's been there from the very beginning.
Wow.
To see all of these different things, because this booklet has also changed, because there were things that came out of the booklet because they weren't in the bylaws. So it was like they've not been able to match up. So this used to prohibit neon sign. The booklet used to prohibit neon signs, but it wasn't in our bylaws. So, and it was, I think under Flynn, he suggested not putting in our bylaws. He made it like more guidelines that could be changed or altered without going to town meeting, I think was his goal, that you could change and update things. And then it got, then people could appeal it and say it's not in the bylaws, and the select board had to approve it, so.
Right, that's what I understood too.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he'd been there since day one though.
Yeah, he was the first.
I mean, that
So
was kind of common sense, I would think, that we don't want,
And he's always denied it. They've always denied the neon signs, but yeah. So I'll send this over and take a look, and we'll think about billboards. And then we have just two last things on the agenda. There is a new, in Cheyenne, if we haven't put you to sleep with this, going through this, do you want to talk about what the finance subcommittee, a little bit about that role? And the select board will be making appointments, and they have added the planning board as a representative position.
Yeah, let me just pull up the chart for you guys.
Sorry, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool. I was saying I was gonna pull up the charge.
Oh, great.
So that everybody could see it. Yeah, I only just heard about the committee like this morning or yesterday, so I don't have too much insight knowledge, but yeah, it's gonna be like a subcommittee, and I think there's gonna be one planning board. Here, let me share my screen. Here we go. So it's going to have, similar to other committees, kind of like a large group of other people just to give their other insights. So we're going to have 2 select board, 2 people from school committee, warrant committee, and then just 1 member of the planning board, which we're going to choose tonight so we can get that tackled. And then I'll zoom in for you.
Thank you.
My understanding from watching some of their meetings is that they wanted to do basically coordinated financial planning to understand what the needs would be, so that there's not a surprise sort of over budget. Like, I don't know exactly how you want to describe, like this past year, unexpected kind of expenditures beyond what budget was. And partly also to think about like the revenue side and new growth as part of revenue, and that's tied to land use and tied to zoning, which is my understanding why planning board's included in it.
Great. So I know Jim is on the capital committee. We were just talking.
You were going to assign him something when he was.
Yeah, we were going to assign you to this subcommittee.
I get it.
So we were just talking about, we were just sort of going over this
read the email.
subcommittee. Yeah. So is there any interest? I know everybody's busy with other lives and serving on different committees. Does anyone have interest in being on this, or not, or has interest in not being on this? committee?
I have interest in not, unless nobody else wants to do it, then I will do it, to be perfectly honest. But it sounds interesting. I'm not that great
Yeah.
with numbers, but I could figure it out.
And you're on the capital committee,
I am.
so that's good, so, yeah. You're,
I definitely have interest in this, but this isn't the time for me to get myself involved in something else. Right now, I'm struggling trying to meet all of my life
yeah,
expectations.
right.
If it was a different time and circumstances were different, I'd volunteer, because I do have an interest in the financial
I know. it's-
aspects of the town, but not the right time for me. I'm sorry for that.
So I know I'm on the climate action, so that's the only, not the only, but the only committee I'm on, and I'm not sure what the lifespan of that is.
Right.
Because it's the Climate Action Planning Committee, and, you know, they've done a great job. Unfortunately, they've met many times when we meet, so I've missed a couple like tonight. So, I guess the question I have would be, how often are they meeting? What time are they meeting? Because, is there flexibility in days? And I don't know if they've gotten that far, and maybe they have to, you know, meet and to figure all that out.
Right.
I think it's once a month, isn't it?
I think the charge is once a month.
That's what I read, yeah.
So once a month isn't overly, it doesn't have a lot of commitment hours there, I don't think. But sometimes, you know how committees go. Then they start meeting more than once a month, or they meet at like 6 o'clock. Like the Climate Action Committee meets at 6 o'clock. And that's a challenge sometimes for me to get to at 6 o'clock. So those are just my questions, and I don't, you know, I'm around town obviously every day. I don't travel too far outside of town. So I'm interested in it. I'm just a little bit nervous about overextending myself if, depending on.
I wonder if we could have, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I was
no,
gonna say,
it's,
I'm not interested in it right now. It's not, it wouldn't be something where I feel like I want to take on one more committee, although Town Farm is wrapped up, which Cheryl and I both served on. So, but I'm wondering if it has to be just one representative. I guess it probably should, or if we could have like 2 people, and, you know, if you were interested also, and we had somebody to attend to report back to the planning, you know, the planning board, what development projects we're working on, maybe, or, you know, and bring feedback back to our committee. But
and that's the question, is how much extra work is it? Is it just,
and you're on
you
a
know,
lot of committees too.
yeah,
so,
sitting around talking about things, or do I actually have to go, and how much work do you actually have to do outside of the committee? Are you just reviewing? And I know it's a new one, and so they probably don't even know yet.
I think, you know, some of this discussion came about, as I said before, about a lot of residents had concerns or questions about how budgets came together and how there could be surprises and so forth. And then I know some of the new select board members were, and maybe old ones too, are interested in more forecasting, and that requires all, you know, participation from town side, from school side, et cetera. And then, you know, some have said that, you know, we really need to look at our commercial tax revenue, right? And so I think that's where previously there had been a committee that was select board and school committee and town staff. And so I think this new constitution, sort of bringing in a few others, is kind of to address that larger, bigger picture. So in terms of the effort, I think it's probably kind of big picture discussion. like if someone said, well, can we begin to think about new revenue, like more commercial revenue? You know, then you have to start talking about, well, can we get more out of the existing business districts than we're getting now? You know, what kind of revenue are we getting there? How feasible is it to get business revenue? You know, like people.
I know, and
What's the demand for office?
I-
What's the demand for
Yeah.
medical office, et cetera, right?
Because it's been challenging to get commercial. I
Yeah.
mean, it took the Hendry site a long time, and they ended up with a nail salon, you know, and it was like everyone said anything but a nail salon.
I know,
but that's,
it's tough running a brick and mortar. I mean, I know all the
It's been tough.
challenges, you know,
And then,
I
you know,
know them all.
and residential. I mean, that's been very, you know, that's
Like
actually
the average household, mine included, you know, you get 5-6 boxes a day from Amazon or from wherever. I mean, it's really challenging it's easier to run a service business than actually a retail business. And so when people start talking about, oh, why don't we have this type of business or that type of business? Well, you need to find an owner who actually wants to take on operating a retail business because it is so challenging. And even if you look at the Chamber of Commerce, the makeup of the Chamber of Commerce, there are very few retail brick and mortar business owners. There's a lot of realtors. It's all service. You have, you know, mortgage providers, all part of the chamber. So that's what I'm interested in, trying to have a more robust retail town. And there used to be, when people say, oh, Milton never allowed commercial. When I was growing up, we had a lot more commercial. And so I do take a little bit of offense to that, oh, Milton is so closed-minded. But we had all of our little neighborhood stores and little pharmacies, all of our little corners. And it's been sad to go, but that wasn't Milton's fault. That was the change of people not wanting to run their own brick and mortar. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I'd like to see the resurrection of more neighborhood, small businesses, but then you run into neighbor problems. And the taxes as a commercial business is great, and you have to be able to work a lot of hours, sometimes outside of our business hours, if you have a bit of an unconventional business. So
you would be interested.
yeah, so I would be
But would you
interested, but I
also be
also don't
interested?
want to like be a disappointment either.
Well, you know, the master plan implementation committee is set to sunset in October, after 10 years.
Yeah.
And there will be a recommendation to update the master plan that comes from that.
And that's been a huge time commitment for you. You've committed a lot of
Yeah,
time.
because I've chaired it. It's, you know, as you know from chairing, it does take time to make sure that prepared for all the meetings, et cetera. And I'm our representative to the, Community Preservation Committee. I have an interest in it. I do have a tendency to overcommit, so I am worried about overcommitting as well. So, Maggie, if you want to give it a start, I don't know, and if you find like that the hours or that aren't convenient, or if you feel like there's it's not the kind of input that you thought it's going to be, maybe we could revisit it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, because it is so new, we don't really quite know, but at least we would have somebody there at the start.
And that's what I thought at the beginning when I heard the selectmen talking about this. I thought it was more about, the school budget is the biggest budget of the town. And for whatever reason, they're their finance subcommittees were not meeting. And so at first I didn't really understand the need. I'm not one to be adding more committees to the town. I'd rather see maybe the merging of committees, and we have town staff. I believe our town administrator, he should be doing a 5-year forecasting plan, and then bringing it to the selectmen to review it. So I kind of thought that was his job description.
So I would think, Maggie, you keep it to what the planning board can contribute to the discussion. And to me, it's the land use things. And you, as a business owner, have a different perspective about that.
Yeah.
But, if you could ask the assessing department or finance office to provide what's the tax revenue generated from Milton Village, from Extra Space Storage, from East Milton Square, Milton Marketplace, and say, okay, we know it's a small percentage. When we did the overlay in Milton Village, we said if that at full build out, we had MAPC do the build out analysis. At full build out in 2019 dollars, it would be $500,000 in new revenue. So whatever that would be today. We know from 440 Granite Ave, they're projecting, I think, $250,000 a year. The same thing, memory care, I think they were projecting that amount. So you could just say, like, for example, a 440 Granite Ave would bring in X, right? A memory care would bring in X. What kind of revenue are we trying to hit with new development, and what does that look like on the ground? That's the kind of conversation that a way the planning board can contribute to that conversation.
Yeah.
Not schools, not town side budgeting, but on the revenue side, on the new growth side. To me,
And it is interesting when you talk about new growth, and I've spoken to the assessor about it, they're always focused on new growth. And I said, yeah, new growth is for that first year, but then they never look at the expense side of it. So they never forecast the expense of the new growth. And to me, that's always interesting. And he's like, yeah, we don't look at that. We just are always looking for new growth.
Well, if you think about the building department, new growth includes when you do an addition on your house or you renovate your house and the assessed value goes up, the tax revenue goes up, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that in Milton, right? There's a lot of, I'm sure, Jim, you've seen it, where a lot of small homes are being added onto. A lot right now are happening. People, and what will ADU bring in for revenue? I think that's a good question. What will MBTA communities, like the economic analysis, can there be a new economic analysis done? Those are the things I think that the planning board rep can bring to the discussion.
Good, all right. So is there a nomination to appoint Maggie to the Finance Subcommittee?
I'll nominate Maggie to be the planning board's representative to the Finance Committee.
I'll second the nomination.
All in favor?
Well, wait, does she accept it?
Oh, yeah, so you accept it?
Yes,
Accept-
conditionally.
Yeah.
And I'll second it.
Don't be afraid to drive the time of the
Maggie,
meeting. Just tell them, look, I want to meet in the mornings if you
Right.
possibly can. Capital
Yeah.
meets at 7:30 by Zoom.
Yeah,
No one has a problem with it.
yeah.
And also, if you want my feedback or input, sometimes I'm happy to either participate or have a call with you about it.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, great. And then there's one last thing on our agenda, and I don't want to spend too much time, but Diane did come, and has been quite concerned that the zoning articles, were not properly disposed of. And I have not talked to Nick, to see I know she sent the select board a letter. She came to us because she didn't hear back from the select board. So I think it makes sense to talk to Nick and find out if there's anything that's going to be happening on, with the state, or any issues that the state has with the articles, or the process. And I think he's probably had a conversation with Sue Galvin and probably town council.
I mean, I sympathize with Diane, and all residents for that matter, that if they ask questions and they don't get responses and you have to kind of bounce around trying to find somebody who will provide the answer for you. So I do sympathize, but I also understand that people are really busy too, and sometimes there can be a delay in getting a response. But I do think she has brought up some valid points, not just on this particular issue, but that's why I know we're here. But it just seems, to me, I've been frustrated not being able to get answers to questions, or, saying, oh, if, you want those questions, you have to pay $13,000 to get the answers. So I'm sympathetic to her. So I don't know if we can ask just like town council to give us an answer, give us a written answer to her questions, just so we have done our duty. With the resident has asked us for answers, and some of the answers I'm not comfortable answering. I mean, I did watch part of the town meeting again this afternoon, and she is right that the moderator, or new moderator, said, I will step aside and collect my things as the temporary monitor gets sworn in, end quote. But I didn't see him, and I don't recall him actually getting sworn in. And so to her point, do you normally get sworn in for a position before you get elected? So maybe there's a very reasonable response legally, and maybe just town council needs to provide that to us, so then we can say we listened and responded.
Any other thoughts? Or?
I understand also about people not knowing, in some cases, where to go with an issue that they have that would like to get an answer on. But this clearly doesn't fall in our jurisdiction.
That's what that was my comment.
It falls under the clerk or the moderator or the select.
We don't have the authority.
We have no authority, and I really don't feel like we can put ourselves in a position of stepping in where we don't have authority because someone's not getting an answer from someone else. I think it's important for us to stay in our lane, and
I wish she had gone to the select board with it and made the statement, and I sort of thought after she sent us the email that she would be doing that. So I don't know where that is, but
Well, I think she's here because, one of the
It's our
articles
articles.
she's referring to was an article that came from the
Right,
planning board.
right.
And she, I think it's obvious the reason she came here, because our article was impacted by what she sees as a procedural violation, right? So she wants to know, how do you feel about that? That's your article. How do you feel about a procedural violation involved in your article? I think it's logical that she came here.
no, I did.
And, my opinion, since we're sharing opinions, I do agree the town should respond, to the residents' concern. And there's a process that exists for a reason. There's a procedure that exists for a reason. Did we violate the procedure? Are we in violation of process? And somebody should, this isn't hard. This is all recorded. This is, I think the town should respond to the resident and say either yes or no, that there's a violation of procedure. That's not complicated. And if the resident has called to attention of the town that a violation has occurred, I think the town's responsible for answering it, no matter what the subject is. I don't think it changes the vote at all, but you have to put that aside. This is a question of not of the vote. It's a question of following process, following procedure, and did we follow it properly or did we not as a town?
But still, it's not our jurisdiction.
I'm not saying it
Yeah.
is. I'm just offering my opinion. Why did she come here? Because it's an article that came from the planning board that was
Right.
affected, by the procedural violation that she sees. So I'm not saying I'm telling Amy to do anything. I'm just, Diane, I give Diane credit. She puts her heart and her soul into the town. There probably aren't a lot of residents that commit as much time and as much energy as she does to the town. So every resident deserves fair and equal consideration. She's brought something forth that's legitimate. Everybody that seems to, have listened to her or heard her, no one's arguing that she has an illegitimate claim. The town should answer it.
And back to process, I mean, I have a question about the process on citizens petitions, because I've been through it, and when I went through it, I was told that I wasn't able to change or amend my citizens petition because I had so many signers on the citizens petition. So all those signers would have to agree to an amendment. So this is just a general question. I don't need an answer now, but this is a question that maybe Peter Mello needs to respond to is, when it's a citizen's petition, it's put forward by 100 people. Do all 100 people have to agree to that amendment?
So I asked a question about, and I don't know who gave you the guidance before, but I asked it on this because I was curious about that, because I think you may have mentioned it before. And what I was told was, once it's put forward, then it can be amended like any other article, once it's there. So just like we can put any town meeting member can make an amendment to a planning board article or anybody's submitted article. So that's what I was told by town council.
Yeah.
But in that case, as the planning board, we would have to agree to the amendment, right?
But if we said, no, we're not going to accept it as a friendly amendment, town meeting could still vote for it anyway. So they could amend something that we've submitted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The town meeting can do that.
Yeah, and
didn't
so,
realize that.
yeah, and so then that's all that town council has to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Is
having a
put it-
different question,
yeah.
and I said, by the way, now that I've got you on the phone,
Yeah.
I asked you about something else, but I
Wow.
wanted to take advantage of having him, but,
So he can easily do that. He can easily respond to that question in writing.
So should we ask him to? Is that where you're going?
Well, to everyone's point,
Out of our
it's
jurisdiction?
out of our jurisdiction, except for it is zoning. I think it would be better if another board or another staff member responds to her out of respect. But if she doesn't get an answer, then I think we should respond. But I don't know how much time
Yeah,
we should wait for that.
well, I don't know exactly who she's reached out to, other than she said that in what she sent to us, that she had
Yeah.
reached out to the select board.
I thought you reached out to the state in her email.
But whether she's reached out to the clerk, the moderator, the town council, the town administrator, chair of the select board, I don't know, but those all seem like more relative, more ones who have jurisdiction than we do.
Yeah, we certainly don't have jurisdiction. It's not like we could call Peter Mello and say, we want a written opinion from you, Peter Mello. But as a board, and since the resident came before us, I think it's fair to say that we could recommend that the resident get an answer from the town administrator, as to her question. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that, right? She came before us, it was on our agenda. There's nothing wrong with us saying that we recommend that the town administrator answer the question that the resident has asked.
I
my feeling.
I don't see us taking a position like that and making that kind of, being a conduit for something that's out of our jurisdiction. I don't
I'll
agree
talk
with.
to Nick and just see if I can,
Yeah, that's what I was
Gather
going
more
to
information, because-
suggest is maybe Meredith could,
maybe there's a process that they are doing that and
Yeah.
taking some steps that we just don't know about, so
Yeah.
I don't want to assume anything, so. But I do appreciate her coming and trying to keep us accountable for what's in our bylaws. So I think it's important. So with that, that is the end of our meeting. So I would, unless there's anything else, entertain a motion. We will sign that before we leave. But I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, all. Thank you.
And I
Thank you.